Dawn seeped in like thin, reluctant blood through the arrow slits of the black cell, painting its walls in useless shades of dying rose. Tyrion Lannister counted each pulse of color while listening to his own heart batter against the ribs that caged it. He tried not to measure time by breaths. Breaths could quicken or slow. But by heartbeats they remained terribly steady, refusing to admit fear. Fear, he decided, was a luxury. Rage was cheaper, more plentiful, easier to barter in the secret markets of the mind, and so he traded in rage now. He lay on a pallet that smelled of rat droppings and straw, soaked too many times in strangers' sweat. Somewhere near his left ear dripped water, counting down moments with maddening regularity. If he shut his eyes, he could still see the Kingsguard swinging their swords in the torchlight beyond the iron bars. They escorted him nowhere. They watched him, white shadows guarding a condemned man's heir. But condemned men could still make bargains, and every hour left before his trial was a coin to spend. "Confess," he whispered, amused at the word as it echoed in the pit. Confession meant surrender. What was there to confess? That he'd loved a king enough to slap him, hated a sister enough to imagine her skull cracking like an overripe pomegranate? Those were truths the city already knew. What? The secret thing no one guessed was how deep his thirst ran for freedom, not for himself alone, but for anyone who bent beneath Cersei's gilded heel. He would drink that freedom. He would drown in it, if he must. Footsteps rattled the stairs. Metal shivered against metal. A key turned, and the light of a single torch reached him, limping. Sir Adam Marbrand appeared first, hair a living banner of beaten copper. Behind him came the jailer, stooped, gums bleeding, eyes yellow where white should be. "Your hour's arrived, imp," Marbrand said, holding a scroll sealed in crimson wax. "The hand expects you at first bell. Bring your tongue, leave your japes." Tyrion smiled, tongue pressed to broken tooth. "I never travel without my tongue, sir. It's a restless creature and refuses to stay behind." He swung short legs over the pallet, wincing as his bare feet kissed the cold. "A pity my champion has only one tongue to trade for me today." "A pity you ever trusted a sellsword at all," muttered the jailer. "Brawn is many things," Tyrion returned. "But faithless is not among them, merely practical." He spat. A fleck of blood from a lip had bitten in sleep. "And practicality in King's Landing means price. I miscalculated the purse. My sweet sister offered him a bride and a castle in the Riverlands. My coffers run empty of castles." "You have a cell," said Marbrand, amused despite himself. "Shall we?" They shackled his wrists, though the manacles hung loose enough to twist free of if he dislocated a thumb. He'd already tested for that, more than once, filing bone against iron in silent rehearsal. Each time it hurt more, and promised less. Today, however, pain might purchase something worthwhile. They ushered him up the spiral stair, past torches sputtering grease, through a doorway that breathed the city's stink. Frying onions, horse manure, the rot behind every corner where the poor slept. King's Landing's smell was louder than its bells. It shouted desperation. The throne room had never looked so swollen with lords. Every bannerman Tywin could call, every minor house whose coffers jingled at Lannister pleasure, crowded the red marble floor beneath tapestry lions. Between columns glimmered faces Tyrion half remembered from feasts, jousts, or brothels. All witnessing, none daring the faintest murmur. The Iron Throne itself loomed at the far end. Spines and jagged teeth, glinting above the heads of the Kingsguard, arrayed like statues carved from salt. At its base sat Prince Tommen, round-cheeked and shrunk inside velvet the color of clotted cherries. Beside him, in a high seat of carved weirwood, reclined Tywin Lannister in robes of cloth of gold so luminous they turned his pale eyes molten. On Tommen's left the Queen Regent waited, dripping rubies and vengeance. Cersei's lips, tinted the deep red of crushed garnets, curled at first sight of her brother. How much did she guess of his intent? Tyrion wondered. Enough to keep her distance. Or would her triumphant certainty drag her straight within reach? He measured the dais. 12 marble steps. 2 guards at the lower landing, each armored in steel, chased with gold. The longer he studied routes, the more the chains galled his wrists. A glance rightward found Varys smiling like a crescent moon partly eclipsed by doubt, whispering to Grand Maester Pycelle, who in turn stroked his beard with watery eyes that held only cowardice. Good. Cowards predicted shadows. They seldom saw the flame rising inside them. Sir Meryn Trant flanked him now, nudging with a gauntleted elbow. Tyrion swallowed pain and advanced. His father addressed the hall. Words drifted like thrown spears. Charges, kingslaying, kinslaying, regicide by poison, the murder of Joffrey Baratheon. The litany rolled on as if Tywin enjoyed savoring each accusation. Tyrion's gaze slid instead toward the gallery where small folk pressed together, hoping perhaps for a crumb of spectacle to sate them until the next corpse swung above Flea Bottom. Beside the small folk enclosure, a score of silent sisters had already arrayed themselves in anticipation of a verdict. Their gray robes rippled, faces hidden behind cowls, like empty pages, awaiting a title. Tyrion smirked. Premature preparation, or careful script writing. Either way, the stage bristled with fatal potential. When they bade him speak, he drew breath not for defense. Defense had never served him, but for revelation. His voice needed calm, soft enough to coax the court to lean forward. If they leaned, they might not notice his hands. "I stand accused," he began, "by noble lips that never tasted truth. You wish my confession, then lend an ear, and I shall unburden my soul." Murmurs slithered across the chamber. Somewhere, the rasp of mailed sleeves. Cersei's gaze sharpened, twin green knives waiting to cut. He lifted shackled wrists. Chains clinked like wind chimes in a storm. "But first, your graces," he said, addressing Tommen and the throne beyond him. "Allow me a draught. My throat is desert from days in darkness. Would you hang a man so parched, he can scarcely name his crimes?" Tommen glanced to Cersei. She nodded after the barest pause. A servant in Baratheon livery produced a silver flagon and a goblet chased in lions, Cersei's own sigil overlaying a crowned stag. Tyrion hid a laugh. So many lions yoked to a dead stag. Symbolism too delicious to ignore. The servant approached, hesitation warring with obedience. Tyrion extended manacled arms. "Pour," he commanded softly. Fingers trembled. Red wine shone like blood as it filled the goblet. He dipped his head in thanks, lifted the cup, but his wrists tangled against the chain. "Sir," he said to Marbrand, "if I may loosen these a touch, you fear a dwarf's strength?" Laughter rippled in cheap seats. Tywin's mouth did not twitch. The key turned. One cuff sprang. One hand free. Only one. Enough. Tyrion drank, lips staining crimson tawny. Wine pooled warm in his gut, coiling like an adder. He had long since switched the flagon, another of various little courtesies. This vintage tingled with essence of nightshade. Colorless, tasteless, slow to kill, yet fast to numb. He had needed but a hush-hush cup to still nerves. The remainder he'd need as blade. "Now," he said, setting goblet on stone balustrade before the dais, "to confession." His freed hand slid unconsciously to the inner seam of his doublet, where a small glass vial sat, stoppered with wax. He could feel its cool shape pressing against his ribs. "I confess I loved this city," he announced. "Loved it enough to save it from the fires my sister invited when she armed wildfire beneath the streets. I confess I believed such love might be returned. Fools believe many things." A hush fell. Even Tywin's eyelids twitched. Wildfire was no rumor. The scar of Blackwater still smoked in nightmares. Tyrion took a step, then another, tasting each inch of risk. Meryn Trant's sword hissed half-drawn. "I confess," Tyrion pressed on, "that I mourn Joffrey. Poor boy, undone by cruelty before he understood mercy. But I did not murder him. No, the true murder sat nearer his heart." His eyes locked on Cersei. She rose, emerald gaze blazing. "Lie." She spat across the hall, voice carrying like iron-scraping slate. "Come closer, sister," Tyrion murmured. "Look upon me, and see if you can spy a lie behind these mismatched eyes." She descended 3 steps, skirts whispering. Gold chains on her bodice rattled like snakes. The crowd drew breath, as though one lung. Tyrion's thumb worried the wax seal in his doublet. Nightshade. 3 drops to stupefy, 10 to still the strongest heart. Enough to stop a lioness? He'd risk it. He tugged free the vial. Tommen watched, wide-eyed, but no one else yet saw. "Speak," Cersei demanded, boots striking marble. She stopped a yard away. "Good." Distance small enough for a throw. Too far for guards to intercept before liquid met flesh. Tyrion flicked the stopper. Thin glass rang against stone as it fell. In the breath that followed, he saw every face. Tywin leaning forward, mouth half open. Pycelle's jaw slack. Varys' eyebrows winging upward. Meryn Trant turning. Tommen shrinking behind golden armrests. He saw Cersei's nostrils flare, smelled her perfume. Myrrh and bitter orange. "I confess one last truth," he whispered. "The world will thank the man who frees it." His wrist snapped, a practiced arc sending dark liquid into the air. A crimson fan blossomed, seeming but spilled wine until droplets spackled Cersei's cheek. She recoiled, hand rising. Guards surged. Tyrion darted left, ducking Trant's reaching arm. He rolled toward the base of the dais, yanking his other cuff to twist the chain around Marbrand's ankle. The knight toppled with a crash of steel. Panic erupted, a 1,000-voiced beast. "Seize him!" Tywin roared. But the poison had begun its work. Cersei swayed, blinking, pupils blowing wide as moons. One hand clutched her bodice. She staggered backward, heels scraping stone. Tyrion vaulted atop Marbrand's shield, gaining height enough to snatch the fallen goblet. Wine still lapped its rim. He hurled it, metal spinning, striking Cersei upon the brow. She collapsed to her knees, lips parted soundlessly. The silence before screams felt like a held breath of the gods. Then, voice after voice broke, high as a flight of crows. Cersei's fingers scrabbled on marble, streaking it with rubies fallen from her gown. Blood? No, rubies only. Her skin, however, bled from the brow, mingling with sweat beaded by the poison's fever. She tried to speak, but her tongue thickened. "Stay back," Tyrion warned the rushing guards. "Or the Queen Regent dies now." They stalled, swords half drawn, uncertain. She was dying already, but knowledge gave him leverage. He snatched Marbrand's dagger, pressing its point beneath her chin as she knelt, spasming. Her eyes sought Tywin, not for comfort but comprehension. Betrayal startled her as much as pain. "Father," she gurgled. Tyrion heard fluid fill her voice tract, lungs drowning inside armor of velvet. Tywin rose. "Tyrion, end this madness. Release her for the sake of House Lannister." "I'm ending madness, father." Tyrion's tone iced the blood of men nearer. "The city breathed madness since the day you crowned Cersei queen. See now what fruit your pride has borne." Cersei's breaths rattled. She clawed at Tyrion's forearm, nails leaving shallow furrows. Her gaze fell to the dagger, shimmered with terror, then lifted to meet his own eyes. Behind that terror, he saw bewilderment. "Why?" it asked, and he almost answered. Her crimes paraded through memory. Myrcella shipped away, the boy king's amusements, the order to kill every bastard in the city. He gave her silence instead, letting knowledge bloom on her face as limbs grew heavy. The hall receded to a murmur. Even those who hated the imp stared aghast, caught between horror and fascination. Varys stepped forward, hand gloved in silk. "Lord Tyrion," he called. "This ends only one way. Allow mercy and the realm may yet forgive." Tyrion laughed, short, bitter. The realm forgave when Cersei burned men alive, when she crushed dissent beneath taxes. "I spare it more pain." He eased the dagger deeper. Her throat pulsed hot against the blade. "Why waste mercy on tyrants?" The Queen Regent sagged. Nightshade's final kiss slackened her limbs, eyes rolling white. Tyrion withdrew the blade as she slumped to floor, hair sprawling like molten gold across red marble. He stepped back, chains clanking. A final shudder passed through her. Then stillness. Silence rang louder than any bell. Torches guttered. The court of the Iron Throne watched the fall of its lioness, as though the walls themselves wept. Tyrion raised the blade, bloodless but glinting. "I, Tyrion of House Lannister," he proclaimed. Voice breaking, "declare the Queen Regent dead, by her own crimes and sentence, executed in the name of justice for King's Landing and all Westeros." Tywin's face ossified, each line an etching of fury. "You are traitor and kinslayer," he said, words stone-heavy. "Guards." "Hold," commanded another voice. Prince Oberyn Martell, stepping from behind a pillar where he'd stood witness. Spear in hand, eyes blazing suns. "I came to defend the imp's innocence. Now, I defend his cause. The woman was poison to us all. Let none move until the Vipers of Dorne agree the path ahead." "Jamjan?" Sword stalled mid-draw. Tywin's gaze flicked between Martell's spear and his own half-mustered force. Question flickered. Could he risk civil war within the throne room itself? Shouts erupted from the gallery. The small folk, sensing tides turned, voiced approval or outrage in equal measure. But another cry cut above. "Queen murder!" Then from half a dozen throats, "Freedom!" It became a chant. Swelling, turbulent. Some tore at lion banners, shredding cloth of gold to ribbons that drifted down like dying leaves. Tyrion exhaled. His arms shook, dagger lowering. He felt the weight of chains again, the promise of payback measured in iron. Yet there was a door cracked open now, a door wide enough to slip through if he found footing. Varys moved beside him, whisper ghost quiet. "Chaos is a ladder, my lord. Climb swiftly before others understand its rungs." "Unlock my remaining cuff," Tyrion answered. "Already done." Thin fingers brushed his wrist. A key ticked. The chain fell, rattling across stone, unread by ears consumed with roar. At the dais, Tommen sobbed into velvet sleeves. Tywin stooped to comfort, though his eyes never left Tyrion. Love warred with vengeance, and Tywin, alas, loved house before blood. Tyrion could almost taste the sentence forming on that unforgiving tongue. "Run then. Run before it is spoken." Oberyn descended steps to stand at Tyrion's flank. "Today you paid debts," he said. "Shall we see if the world honors them?" "After you, Prince," Tyrion replied, voice hoarse. They moved as one through parting ranks, Varys ghosting behind, Marbrand stumbling upright, but offering no chase. The Kingsguard looked to Tywin for command. None came quickly enough. By the time the Lion of Lannister shouted, Tyrion and his escort were slipping through a side arch behind a tapestry of Nymeria's landing. Down corridors stinking of dust. Past a septi, where candles flickered before statues of 7 who watched without judgment. Through a servant's passage that graded gently downward toward the dungeons once more. Yet deeper dungeons that led to old tunnels beneath the Red Keep where wildfire caches slept. There, Tyrion paused, chest heaving. "Do you know these ways?" Oberyn asked, spear butt tapping. Tyrion nodded. "A map carved in my boyhood onto parchment pilfered from Maester's shelves. One route emerges behind a brothel in the Street of Silk, another under the Dragon Pit's ruin. Both open tonight." Varys tilted his shaven head. "Best choose the pit. The Street of Silk streets will swarm with gold cloaks soon." "Nah." Tyrion drew breath of damp stone. "So we go to the pit." He touched the dagger's hilt. Realized hand still trembled. His sister's blood or his own uncertainty. He wiped sweat on tunic. "I never asked for Prince's company," he told Oberyn. "You needed it," the Dornishman answered. "And Dorne needs you alive, Lannister or not. The truth of Joffrey's murder has yet roots unseen. You and I share a taste for vengeance duly placed." Tyrion almost smiled. The future unspooled before him in dizzy labyrinths. The city in uproar. Tywin wounded but not beaten. The Reach's armies restless for gold. The Riverlands bleeding. And above all, his sister's tyranny ended, but not contagion it spread. Somebody had to shape tomorrow. He had killed Cersei to free Westeros. To keep it free would demand more than one blade. He started forward. Footfalls behind him echoed like the pounding heart of a dragon stirring beneath earth. In the throne room above, bells would soon toll for a queen. But beneath stone, Another sound rose. Low, urgent, unstoppable. The rumble of change on the march. Tyrion Lannister tightened his grip on the future and walked into the dark. Ka, Dei. PGSQ, Else. The stale air of the tunnel pressed upon Tyrion's lungs, as though the red keep itself had slumped atop his shoulders. Above them chaos reigned, but here beneath the hill, everything seemed to wait, unmoving, for the echo of the next turning point in history. A rat skittered across the flagstones ahead, its nails scratching faint sparks from rock. Tyrion wondered guiltily if it fled the wildfire stores he himself had hidden seasons ago. The thought of that lurid green glow soaking through the dark coaxed a shiver up his spine. Better not to linger long. Behind him, Varys padded soundlessly, lantern cradled within the sleeve of his robe. Oberyn walked at Tyrion's shoulder, spearpoint canting forward to feel for low rafters, the way a blind man's cane might test uncertain streets. Moisture dripped from somewhere overhead, and the floor sloped ever downward, cold and slick. Tyrion tried to slow his breathing. Each inhalation smelled of mold, wet stone, and old secrets. "If wildfire sits close," Oberyn murmured, "one spark from that lantern will roast us tender." Varys raised the flame no higher. "This was gathered for the Blackwater. Many kegs have been spent. But you are right, my prince. Let us assume every shadow could detonate." Tyrion chuckled. "Uneasy, comforting notion. I find myself fond of my present size, and would rather not become a scattering of smaller pieces." They wound through a vaulted chamber whose walls bloomed with pale lichen. On shelves lay rusted helms that might have belonged to the first Targaryen garrison. The skull of a calf-sized dragon rested atop a rotted crate, its eye sockets black hollows drinking the lantern glow. Oberyn paused, stroking bone ridges. "A pity," he whispered. "Their flame burned out before they bathed my enemies in it." Tyrion raised an eyebrow. "Careful what you wish. Dragons do not choose foes politely." "Dragons," Oberyn answered, "choose strength. We shall offer them that someday." A low boom reverberated faintly through the stone, distant but unmistakable. A door slammed above, or maybe a siege gong. 3 heartbeats later, a deeper rumble followed, like many feet pounding in unison. "Guards spreading out," Varys said. "Tywin will lock the gates and sweep the keep step by step. Then we step quicker." Tyrion set off, picking around fallen blocks where roots had burst mortar seams. His legs ached. Wine and adrenaline had kept pain at bay, but the poison's fumes still lingered in his nostrils, vivid as a memory of murder. Each pulse of his heart replayed Cersei's last gasp. ... Would guilt follow? He did not know. He felt only necessity's hollow triumph. At an iron-bound door sagging from corroded hinges, he stopped. "This should open into a collapsed armory an inch beneath the dragon pit," he said. Past the rubble, a stair climbs to daylight. Oberyn planted his spear and shoved. The door gritted but moved. Dust billowed. A tangle of cobweb draped the threshold like funeral gauze. They ducked through, lantern wafting motes that danced gold before vanishing into dark. The chamber beyond sprawled wider than Tyrion recalled. Roof vanished into shadow, floor ankle-deep in chunks of broken masonry. An entire wall had fallen out at some remote point, exposing twisted beams and a sliver of waning afternoon sky high above. The opening must have served carrion birds. Their droppings streaked the stones. Tyrion smirked. Even decay had gateways if one cared to search. "We climb," he decided, already probing footholds. The dwarf scrambled with surprising nimbleness, age-old blocks steady enough beneath his weight. Oberyn followed lithely. Varys, less sure, tucked the lantern inside his doublet and hauled himself up in short, soft grunts. Wind met them at the rim, cool, carrying scents of char, overturned soil, and human sweat. Tyrion rolled onto a grass-covered ledge on the dragon pit's outer side. Weeds swayed, silver-green in the dusk. Below spread the vast ovoid bowl of the pit itself, shattered domes, pillars clawing at the dimming sky, broken brick arches like the ribs of a colossal carcass. In its center, lazy smoke rose from fires the homeless used for cooking rats and pigeons. Distantly, across the rooftops, a feverish glow brightened. King's Landing aflame with torches and lanterns, and were those pyres? No, just bonfires at every square. Bells tolled in harsh counterpoint, their clamor sliding down the hill, as though sound itself fled the keep. Half the city celebrates, half riots. Varys observed. We should vanish while confusion reigns. Tyrion studied the warren of streets curling away from the pit. Gold cloaks would search the main routes first, expecting them to slip toward the harbor or gate. A wiser path ran north along the slope, then west, then down the river gate. He pictured alley after alley. Eyes closed. Butchers' stalls, pot shops, vine-covered walls. Memory shaped a map sharper than any parchment. We head for Cobbler Square, he said at last. Bronn keeps a room above a brewhouse there. If he hasn't fled with his new bride, it will be our door to open. If he has, a baron replied, we open other doors. Varys chuckled thinly. I have a set of keys for every lock but death. He swept his robe against his knees to dislodge dust. Lead on, my lord. They skidded down rubble into the dragon pit basin, startling a trio of barefoot children who shrieked and fled toward makeshift shacks. Dogs barked, then howled at the smell of strangers. Tyrion guided them through pillars he remembered as boyhood wonders. Stones where Targaryens once chained beasts big enough to swallow a warhorse. All gone now, yet something in their emptiness spurred him. Houses might fall, queens might choke, but legends shaped the world longer than bloodlines. Could he sculpt one this night? They climbed the far slope, clambering over segments of collapsed vault. A skinny man in rags rose from behind a pile, knife in hand. Oberyn's spear flicked. The rag man saw the glint, reconsidered, stumbled backward, muttering a blessing to the mother. Tyrion tossed him a copper groat, neither to buy loyalty nor to wound pride, but simply because death already weighed tonight. One coin might lighten the scale. At the top, broken walls parted onto a street, hugging the hill of Rhaenys. An overturned cart blocked half the lane, apples spilled and mashed underfoot. Two corpses lay nearby, throats slit, their purses missing. Smoke-draped rooftops, turning sunset amber into bruised violet. Tyrion limped down the street, keeping to shadows, ears pricked for the clash of mailed boots. They passed a smithy, where red iron cooled, untended on the anvil. Hammer abandoned mid-stroke. They found a sept gate plastered in fresh prayer papers, begging the seven for swift justice or swift revenge. The ink still wet. Everywhere the city seemed to hold its breath, listening for the next name to fall. Near Cobbler Square the crowds thickened, threads of rumor weaving a living net. Tyrion heard shouts. Queen dead, answered by false. Lannister lies. He glimpsed Tyrell guards in green cloaks, trying to shepherd frightened merchants towards safer quarters. The gold cloaks were fewer than usual, likely massed at the Red Keep. We part here, Varys hissed, tugging Tyrion's sleeve. They ducked into a tanner's alley rank with piss water. I must so calm, else wildfire spreads faster than your sister's contagion. Trust that I will guide the whispers. But beware the lion's roar. Tywin will name you Kinslayer before morning. Diwan Naihor. Better Kinslayer than Kingslayer, Tyrion muttered. At least my kill deserved the blade. Oberyn touched the eunuch's arm. We will meet again, the prince said. Send word to the old apothecary by the gate of the gods. Varys bowed once, the lantern's glow framing his bald head like a halo. Then he melted into confusion. Tyrion led Oberyn through an archway spanned by sagging laundry lines. Cobbler Square lay ahead, a crossroads ringed by bootmakers, slipper stalls, and a tavern whose chipped sign read the Soul Maiden. The brewhouse Tyrion sought leaned beside it, half timber sagging under 3 stories. Light leaked from an upper casement. Inside, someone laughed. A rough bark he knew as well as his own size. Bronn, Tyrion breathed. That mercenary abed when kingdoms topple. Not surprising. He scanned the street. No gold cloaks yet, though a pair of Tyrell outriders trotted past. Good enough. They slipped through the tavern door. Warm ale stink enveloped them, hiding their own sweat. 6 patrons shared benches. 2 hedgemen trading dice, a matron nursing cider, a barge captain and his deckhand, and Bronn with his new bride, Lolly Stokeworth, across a plank table. She looked content, cheeks flushed from drink, and likely Bronn's boasting. Bronn himself raised dark brows when Tyrion limped up. "Didn't expect you," he drawled. "Thought you'd be dead or polishing chains for life." "Both possibilities lost their sheen," Tyrion said, sliding onto a bench uninvited. "Your castle purchase stands or falls on my next request." "Here it comes," Bronn grinned. "How dear the hour, dwarf. Guard me tonight. Get me beyond the city walls, see me safely to River Run, and you may double whatever Stokeworth promised. Take it from Lannister gold, or from Lannister hides." Lollies blinked at her husband. "You have a castle already," she whispered. Bronn patted her arm. "Heaps bigger if I keep this man breathing, sweet. Besides, River Run's a way off. That's days of hazard pay." Oberyn cleared his throat. "I too require safe passage." Bronn's eyes narrowed. "More hazards, more coin." Tyrion angled his head. "3 times Stokeworth," he offered. "And if you like the Vale better, the Eyrie may soon want new men. It pays in sky views." Bronn scratched his jaw. "All right, but we start now. Gold cloaks sweep this ward within the bell." He rose. Lollies did likewise, confused. "You'll leave me?" she asked. "You'll go with me," Bronn replied. "Safer where I ride." He tossed a few coins on the table, kissed her nose, and flung a cloak over his shoulders. "Ale's on the Lannister," he told the barkeep. They filed out the back, into an alley where Bronn whistled. A stable boy emerged leading 3 saddled horses and a pony. Tyrion laughed. "You keep ponies ready. I keep profits ready," Bronn answered. "Never know which direction they need riding." Tyrion clambered into the saddle, chains clanking until he wrapped them tight round his waist like a belt. The iron links bit through fabric, but he ignored the sting. Oberyn mounted a tall bay, spear lashed across his back. Lollies perched before Bronn on a rangy chestnut, her hands gripping the pommel with white-knuckled resolve. The streets had grown darker. Torches bobbed like fireflies, patrols wove nets through lanes. Bronn set off at a steady trot, hugging the quieter roads. Tyrion felt each hoofbeat reverberate up his spine, and found the rhythm reassuring. Progress counted in beats, the same steady measure he'd used in the cell. Freedom's cost ticked nearer. They swung into Fishmonger's Row, arrow slits of closed shutters watching silently. A shutter crashed open overhead. A woman's voice spilled curses at unrest below, unmindful of riders beneath. Further on, 2 orphan boys fought over a heel of bread. Bronn tossed them each a copper without slowing. Tyrion did not glance back to see if the boys kept fighting anyway. Tonight generosity might only sow sharper envy. Nearing the river gate, they were forced to slow. A knot of gold cloaks held the arch, interrogating anyone who wished to pass. Torches cast monstrous shadows over stacked kegs of tar. The gatehouse teeth were shut, but a postern beside it allowed foot traffic. Horses would not squeeze through. Bronn reined in. "Options?" he asked Tyrion. "Bribe," Tyrion said. "Kill," Oberyn said, smiling faintly. Bronn weighed both. Cheaper to bribe, safer to kill later. He nudged Lollies. "Slip down behind that cart. Wait." She obeyed, knees knocking. Bronn handed her the reins. "If it turns loud," he told her, "run back to the maiden, lock the room, stay quiet." "I will," she said, though fear warred with doubt in her eyes. Bronn and Oberyn dismounted. Tyrion swung down too, wincing as chains tugged his ribs. Together they approached the sergeant, a burly man whose new gilded pauldron still gleamed. Fresh to the post, ambitious perhaps. "Good. Gates closed by command of Lord Tywin," the sergeant barked. "Return to your hovels until sunrise." Tyrion spoke before Bronn could. "Lord Tywin's command does not bind Crown Prince Oberyn Martell." He indicated the Dornish men with a sweep of his hand. The sergeant blinked. "Prince? I thought. You thought wrong. You think so much wrong you'll soon choke on it. Open the postern and let us pass, or answer to Dorne's wrath." Bronn pressed a coin into the man's fist discreetly as Oberyn advanced. "Spear butt scraping stone." The sergeant swallowed. "Just the 3 of you." "And the lady," Bronn said, gesturing behind. "No mounts through postern," the sergeant insisted, voice weak. "We'll lead them," Tyrion replied. "Or would you confiscate property of His Highness, as well as impede him?" Another coin changed pockets. The sergeant glanced at his two men. They shrugged. The postern creaked open, a slit of darkness beyond. "Go then," the sergeant muttered. "Your name?" Oberyn asked suddenly. "Alistair," he stammered. "I will remember, Alistair," Oberyn promised, eyes shining in torchlight. Whether reward or curse he did not clarify. They ducked, through single file, guiding horses. Outside the wall the night breeze smelled sweeter, river cool, edged with marsh grass and tar from the fisher wharves. Moonlight spilled silver across Blackwater Rush. On the opposite bank lights glimmered at the Tumblestone campsite, where Tyrell tent fires stood watch over the field. Further south, the road to Duskendale faded into treed silhouette. "We ride toward the Roserad," Bronn decided. "Tywin will hunt east and riverward. Hell reckon you'll flee by ship." He mounted. Lollies clung behind once more. Tyrion nodded. He doubted his father would anticipate him trusting a mercenary twice. He spurred the pony into a canter along a narrow track, hugging the riverbank. Reed slapped his boots. Frogs flung themselves aside. Up ahead, willow branches drooped like tattered banners over the path. The city's noise dwindled into a distant roar. They rode until moon reached its zenith. At a ruined windmill, they halted to rest the horses and share a skin of wine Oberyn had procured along the way. Tyrion sipped sparingly. His mind roved to what dawn might bring. Proclamations, perhaps Tywin's declaration of emergency authority, maybe Tommen's tears delivered to High Septon for sympathy. Cersei's body would lie wrapped in silk, her beauty preserved to invite myth-making. But rumors grow on weeds. Some would say she poisoned herself. Others that she still lived, smuggled away. Truth seldom outran a liar's tongue. Only results mattered. He whispered a brief prayer to whomever listened that Tommen would be spared Chaos Blade. Oberyn watched him. "You pity the boy. He's as blameless as dreams," Tyrion answered. "Mayhap when he grows a beard hell order my head, but let that day come honestly, not by plots." Bronn snorted. "Boy won't live that long if Tyrell smell weakness." He gave Lollies a squeeze. "Kings are like casks. Many tap them, few let them age." Tyrion tossed a pebble into black water. Ripples glimmered. "Then let's hand him a tutor sharper than sycophants." "My brother Jaime, perhaps." Oberyn's smile thinned. "I have questions for your brother. Regarding my sister's murder." "Then ask him," Tyrion sighed. "If I know Jaime, he'd rather face grief than father's disappointment tonight." They remounted. The ponies breathed heavy clouds in the cool. The Roserad glimmered pale ahead, moonlit dust swirling behind a line of wagons, making north at safe distance. On its packed earth they urged their mounts to a steady stride, hooves beating a lullaby of hope. Dawn found them beside a half-collapsed toll house where sparrows nested in roof holes. Lolly slept against Bronn's back. Blue light washed away night's illusions. The world looked raw, as if someone had scraped the paint from a map. "We should leave the road soon," Bronn advised. "Cut cross-country to Maidenpool, then along the Trident. Less patrols." Tyrion agreed, though his thighs burned. "Father's ravens fly faster than us. By now he'll have offered a bounty that fattens each hour." Oberyn flexed gloved fingers around his reins. "Let them come," he said. "The viper has fangs." They left the road, threading between barley fields damp with dew. Larks burst skyward at their passage. Tyrion's thoughts wandered to River Run. What allies awaited? The Blackfish Brynden commanded there. His defiance of the twins still echoed. Would he shelter a Lannister kinslayer? Possibly, if it weakened the greater line. He pictured Sansa Stark's gentle eyes, and wondered whether she learned of Cersei's end yet. Had she smiled? Or tightened her jaw, fearing new storms? For a moment, guilt over her own suffering flared like an ember. He would do better by her, if chance allowed. For now, survival remained step one. That afternoon they glimpsed smoke plumes behind, the dust of riders closing. Bronn urged faster. Horses foamed. Tyrion's pony fought the pace, but obliged. They crossed a brook, splashing fetlocks, and scrambled up the far bank through alder thickets. Sharp branches snagged Tyrion's sleeve. He tore free fabric and skin alike. Atop the ridge, a meadow spread bright with buttercups. Here Bronn wheeled the chestnut, knocking an arrow to a shortbow head carried slung. 5 gold cloaks emerged from trees below, raising trumpet cries. Oberyn couched his spear, silhouette regal on the horizon. Tyrion's stomach clenched. He lacked sword or bow. His dagger dripped only memory. Bronn loosed. One cloak toppled, arrow sprouting from his throat. Oberyn kicked his mount into a downhill charge, spear leveled. The slope accelerated him like breaking wave. He skewered a second guard clean through breastplate, ripped the weapon free and crimson arc died away. Bronn shot again, then a third shaft. 2 more cloaks fell. The last bolted. Oberyn gave chase but let him escape, perhaps to spread fear. Tyrion exhaled, heart booming. Bronn retrieved arrows where he could, grinning. 10 dragons each, I reckon, he said. They pressed on until twilight bled gold across the east. In a coppice, they found a shepherd's hut, abandoned for season. Bronn set lookout while Tyrion and Oberyn dragged straw inside for beds. Lollies cooked oats over a twig fire, humming broken lullabies. Tyrion accepted a bowl, though appetite had fled. He needed starch, not pleasure. "Do you regret it?" Lollies asked timidly as she stirred the pot. "Killing a queen." Tyrion considered. "I regret kingship, queenship, the illusions we dress power in. But Cersei's reign ended many lives already. In time perhaps I will mourn the sister I once played with in Casterly Rock's halls. Tonight, I mourn those she never let live." He blew on the porridge, thinking of Shay too. Her body still cooling in the Tower of the Hand when last had seen her. He shoved the memory aside, grief later. They slept fitfully. At moonrise, Tyrion woke to muffled voices outside. He slipped from the hut, spotting Bronn and a hulking figure near the horses. Weapon ready, he eased closer. "That one," rumbled a deep voice. "The imp?" "Eh," Bronn said quietly. "Alive as agreed." Tyrion stepped forward. The hulking man turned. Shagga, son of Dolf, half-armored in stolen mail, hair braided with boar tusks. His wide grin split scarred cheeks. "Halfman," he roared, embracing Tyrion with crushing enthusiasm. "Shagga rides to break your chains." Tyrion gasped, ribs protesting. "Shagga, friend, by all gods, ease." When he found breath. "How came you here?" Shagga explained that mountain clansmen still camped near River Run, drawn by rumor of war spoils. Word of Tyrion's arrest had spread. Shagga vowed to carve a path to the Vale and then south. Fate and tavern tongues guided him west. Fortune, or perhaps Varys, had put him on this trail tonight. He brought 40 clansmen, armed with Lannister steel they once earned as Tyrion's allies in Blackwater. Warm gratitude flooded Tyrion. Allies materializing from old debts meant the world had not turned wholly upside down yet. "We ride to River Run," he said. "You will earn spoils enough." "Shagga will take spoils," the clansmen agreed. "And a goat for every lion slain." "Go ease, we shall procure," Tyrion promised. Dawn broke with the smell of pine resin and horse sweat. The company now numbered nearly 50. Shagga's men laughed thunder, scaring jays from trees. Bronn looked pleased, more blades between them and Tywin's bounty hunters. They followed wooded tracks east of the Roserad, glimpsing patrols from ridgetops but never engaging. That afternoon, a dust plume heralded a troop of heavy horse bearing the red gold lion on black. Tywin's outriders. Bronn called for silence. They crouched in tall ferns, while 12 knights thundered past, banners snapping. Tyrion recognized Ceradam Marbrand at their head. Anger etched into his copper hair. The hoofbeats passed. Hearts resumed. On the 4th day, the fields turned damp with river mist. Purple irises dotted marshy ground. Beyond rose the towers of River Run, banners rippling trout against blue-red field. Cheers erupted among the clansmen. Tyrion allowed relief to loosen his shoulders. But the drawbridge remained up. Atop the Barbican archers knocked arrows. A shout, "Who comes?" rang across water. Oberyn trotted to the bank. Prince of Dorne brings the Imp of the Rock to parley. Silence congealed. Then a single rider emerged from the west tower. Sir Brynden Tully, cloak swirling. He studied them long. At last his voice carried. "Your lantern cast a strange shade, Imp. Explain." Tyrion rode forward, remove helmet. Meeting Brynden's stern gaze. "I brought truth to King's Landing," he called. "Truth proved sharper than sister's crown. I come seeking shelter for a while, and maybe sharper truths for you." Brynden spat over the parapet. "We have no love for Lannister treachery. Then grant me guest right and judge inside, not across moats." A pause. Hooves clopped across stone. Brynden leaned on his saddle horn. "Very well. One day's guest right. Bring no more than 10 men inside. The rest camp under your banners." "Dalia." Tyrion bowed from the waist. "I will remember River Run's courtesy." The bridge lowered, creaking. They crossed waters swirling cold around ancient pilings. Inside walls, Tully men disarmed them politely. Oberyn surrendered his spear with a nod. Shagga only after 2 men coaxed his fingers from the haft. In the great hall, banners of House Tully hung heavy in still air. At the high table sat Brynden's niece, Lady Rosalind Frey Tully, whose husband Edmure remained a hostage at the twins. Her small son fussed in a wet nurse's lap. The Blackfish offered Tyrion wine but not a seat. Formalities set. Brynden spoke first. "News flew fast. Cersei Lannister dead, the Imp accused. Why should River Run risk war shielding you?" Tyrion summoned every ounce of fatigue and gravity into his voice. "Because Tywin wants me dead, and Tywin wants River Run under heel. Shelter me, and you hold a knife to his throat, one he cannot easily parry. And because the boy on the Iron Throne needs protection from the men behind it. My father calls himself Warden of the West. Soon he will name himself Regent again. He will press the war hammer against your gates as sure as sunrise." "Nah." Brynden drank, eyes sharp. "And you? What press you bring, Imp? Counsel, gold, alliances." He flicked gaze to Oberyn. "Dorne stands beside me." Oberyn inclined head. "Dorne stands beside justice. We owe Tywin blood for Elia and her children. Protect Tyrion and you gain our spear points when war renews." The Blackfish paced. "Spears of Dorne and gold of Lannister. But you expect us to trust your coin after crossing your kin?" Tyrion nodded. "I crossed Tyrant, not kin. Tywin and I share blood but not honor. He sees River Run as rebellious. I see it as bulwark. Help me break the lion's jaw, and the river runs free." Brynden stopped before him. "Guest right buys you bed and board. It does not buy my armies. Earn that tomorrow." Tyrion inclined head. "I will." Relief fluttered inside. One night under roof enough to plan next moves. That evening, he stood atop River Run's rampart watching sunset bruise the trident orange. Fish leapt glimmering in pools formed where 2 rivers met. He sipped wine slower than he once drank. Each swallow tasted of choices still ahead. Beside him, Oberyn gazed south. "You mean to break your father's power?" the Viper mused. "That path bites." Tyrion nodded. "So do we. The 7 kingdoms chew many flavors." Oberyn laughed softly. "I tire of bitterness. Perhaps time for something spiced by Dorne." Below in the courtyard, Shagga's clansmen built fires and swapped tales. Bronn conferred with Brynden's captains, measuring walls, counting arrows. They prepared for siege not yet begun. Tyrion admired the mercenaries' diligence. Sellsword or not, Bronn seemed to have chosen a side, at least while coin flowed. Night deepened. Stars drank river mist. Tyrion inhaled, exhaled, felt emptiness expand and contract like the bellows of a forge. In that emptiness, he forged resolve. He would not let killing his sister be the only verse history sang of him. He would write lines about mercy to the weak, justice to the strong, cunning enough to carve new order. And if he died before the stanza ended, at least the melody would linger. Far off to the west, beyond moon-silvered hills, a wolf howled. Tyrion's thoughts drifted to the north. Sansa, bastards, broken vows. old lines redrawing across maps. Might he one day ride past Winterfell's smoking ruins, or its rebuilt towers? Too soon to tell. For now, the chapter opened on a riverside castle, a guest of wary allies, with gold cloaks hunting through night for his head. Tomorrow he would send ravens, one to Jaime, urging him to break free of father, one to Prince Doran, inviting formal compact, one to the Vale's Lady Arryn, sowing seeds of mutual grievance. Letters, words made of ink. Tyrion finished the wine, wiped his mouth, and descended the stair. In the hall, Bran's ancient stories spoke of little people who became giants in deeds. He found a quiet chamber, dismissed servants, and set quill to parchment. Words flowed steady, measured in heartbeats. Outside, Riverland's frogs boomed their nocturnal song, as constant as the drip in his old cell. A strange symmetry, life and captivity trading places. At last he sealed the last scroll with river clay. Candle gutters cast wavering shapes, dragons, lions, vipers, across the stone walls. Tyrion watched until flame died, leaving darkness unbound. Somewhere in that dark, he thought he saw Cersei's face. Not in anger but in late childhood, when she dared him to climb Casterly Rock's sea tower. She'd laughed with wind in her hair. He shut eyes. The memory faded. Morning would birth new battles, but for one fleeting breath he allowed sorrow to wash him clean. Then he slept, dreamless, beneath a borrowed roof, the quiet heartbeat of a kingdom shifting in its sleep, just beyond the walls. PGSQ. Morning unfurled across River Run, in thin ribbons of pearl and rose, slowly teasing mist from the Tumblestone and Red Fork, until the rivers gleamed like twin blades beneath a smith's hearthfire. Tyrion woke before the trumpets, heart already accelerating toward the long day's intrigues. A single candle guttered on the writing desk beside his narrow guest bed. Its wick crumbled, spent in nocturnal labor. 4 scrolls lay sealed in wax. One for Jaime, one for Prince Doran, one for Lady Arryn, and the last for the Blackfish himself, that wily trout in a sea of lions. He rolled stiff shoulders, grimacing as the manacled bruises bit anew, and shuffled to the embrasure. Outside, the inner ward bustled. Cooks scuttled between kitchen and hall, smoke from breakfast hearths curling in mild autumn air. Tully grooms led Tyrion's weary pony and Oberyn's bay toward the stables. Bronn, armored now in mismatched plate, drilled 3 of Shagga's clansmen in the yard, their axes carving arcs that glimmered at each swing. Above them, Brynden Tully's crimson cloak snapped on the rampart like a war drum's beat. Tyrion inhaled river-damp breeze, then dressed quickly, choosing a doublet of plain brown wool that would not scream Lannister in this house of fish. He belted dagger and tucked a stiff parchment list, tallies of food, arrows, stones for catapults, into an inner pocket. War rolled toward them. Logistics outlasted loyalty. In the great hall, the Blackfish presided over a breakfast council. Maester Vyman, Sir Desmond Grell, Castellan, Sir Robin Ryger, Captain of Guards, Lady Rosalind nursing her babe behind a linen screen, Bronn, freshly invited, Oberyn Martell in an embroidered mantle the color of sunrise, and to Tyrion's surprise, Sir Davos Seaworth, the Onion Knight, cloaked in Baratheon. Davos sat modestly near the lower trestle yet radiated quiet authority. Brynden waved Tyrion to an empty bench. We debated whether to wait on you, imp, but dawn does not tarry. Sit. Explain why ravens flapped south and east in your name before cockcrow. Davsi. Tyrion poured himself watered wine, eyes scanning faces. No hostility yet, only expectant skepticism. My letters invite allies whose grievances align. Doran Martell hates Tywin's memory of Elia. Lysa Arryn fears lion claws reaching through the mountains of the moon. And my brother, well, he hates war turned inward upon the innocent. Your brother's sword is sworn to the throne, Sir Robin noted. My brother's honor is sworn to the throne, Tyrion corrected gently. And the throne at present is a boy buffeted by men twice as cruel as Winter. He bit into trencher bread, considering textures. If River Run hosts a council of grievance, perhaps Tommen gains new regents, not named Tywin. Brynden tapped a finger on the table. You propose a new regency? A regency of balance, Tyrion replied. A triumvirate, Dorne, Riverlands and the Vale, with perhaps Storm's End joining if Lord Stannis' widow can be convinced. My father's northward gaze would meet walls of stone and stubbornness. Benton? Triumvirates rot, Davos said quietly. 3 men seldom rowed the same oar. Tyrion inclined his head. True. Yet 3 keep one from steering into whirlpools alone. He sipped. I do not pretend we will clasp hands singing, but we may clasp swords to mutual defense. Oberyn lifted a fig to his lips. Dorne will not fight merely at letter's call. We require justice. Elia's name cleared, her children mourned with crowns of truth. And Casterly Rock must bleed silver and gold in reparation. Done, Tyrion said before he could doubt. When Tommen is free of father, he will issue a royal proclamation of Martell innocence in the tragedy of Elia. As for silver and gold, he spread his arms. I am heir no longer. My father disowned me the moment Cersei breathed her last. But I know where coins hide in the rocks caves deeper than any dragon's den. You will have them, Prince, if I must mine them stone by stone. An hour of wrangling followed. Sir Desmond's ledgers of grain, Maester Vyman's warnings of flux, Davos' quiet caution that the Stormlands starved after 3 wars, Oberyn's unyielding insistence on southern autonomy. Tyrion played conductor, nudging chords into harmony, or at least productive discord. By the time the hall doors swung open and 2 sentries ushered in a mud-spattered scout, a fragile shape of alliance seemed possible. Sir, the scout told Brynden. A Lannister host marches east from Oxcross, 10,000 foot, 2,000 horse, led by Sir Davin Lannister and Sir Forley Prester, banner of the lion beside a black mourning pennant. Brendan's jaw tightened. They'll ford the Red Fork within a week. Riverrun has maybe 4,000 spears fit to stand a proper siege. Tyrion exhaled. So father sent nephews first, keeping his own entry for a climax. The Blackfish holds moats no host yet breached, he said. But moats alone will not feed defenders. He glanced at Vyman. Order the small folk to harvest early. Move every bushel inside walls. Flood the fields, then burn stubble. Scorch earth behind us. Brynden grimaced. Starving my own people is no easy order. Starving them later under lion rule will be worse, Tyrion answered. Hard choices breed kinder outcomes sometimes. Davos' rough voice offered counsel. I sailed Siege harbors twice. A trick. Send out word of free bread. Refugees stream to you. What grain they can carry you weigh, then pay in salt cod and root. They'll speak of your mercy. Some will man the walls for hot stew. Your stocks rise, and the lion's logistics stretch. Then or watch, sir. Tyrion pointed a crust at Davos. From smuggler to quartermaster, sound advice. He faced Brynden. Do this. You gain numbers and tales of a just host. So be it, Brynden relented, nodding to Vyman. Draft proclamations. Grell, spread riders, town criers by midday. Grell bowed and strode out. Tyrion finished breakfast and tucked the scroll for Jaime inside his sleeve. He needed a fast raven to White Harbor. Rumor placed Jaime there on escort of Jane Poole north toward Winterfell for her rumored reunion. An empty courtesy Tywin hoped might pacify northern hearts. Perhaps the boy had reached Moat Cailin by now. Still, ravens flew faster than men, and he had to try. In the rookery he found maester apprentices scrubbing cages. Feathered messengers gurgled in wicker baskets. Tyrion penned a final line, by your love for a kingdom sane, calm, and bound it to the strongest crow. Vyman hissed over his shoulder. Risky message, my lord. If intercepted. My father will know anyway, Tyrion concluded. Jaime's loyalty is his assumption. He released the crow into crisp air. It beat west first, then wheeled north, swallowed by pale sky. Afternoon ushered drilling. Shagga's mountain spears wove with Tully halberds in muddy yard. Bronn oversaw archers along inner parapets. Shifting sightlines. Tyrion limped from knot to knot. commending, correcting, promising coin for every new recruit. He noted arrow supply short by half. Fletchers hammered pine shafts while children plucked crow feathers for flights. Beside smithy fires, portcullis chains were re-oiled and spare links cast. War smelled of ash and sweat. By dusk ravens returned, one from Lysa Arryn, one from Sunspear. Lysa's missive dripped icy courtesy. She would entertain terms if Tyrion presented himself in person, under the protective wing of the Eyrie's height. Not ideal. Still, an open door. Doran's letter surprised. He wrote not in cipher but frank Dornish rhymes, accepting alliance. Should justice walk hand in hand with caution, he would send his eldest daughter, Arianne, north with 1,000 spearmen to treat. A brisk start. Tyrion pocketed the letters, heart lighter. But Twilight's peace cracked when horns blared atop the west wall. Riders approaching under white flag. From rampart Tyrion beheld 5 knights, one bearing a crimson standard fringed in gold. Ser Davin Lannister himself. Brynden joined him. Parley? Parley, Tyrion confirmed. "El go." They crossed drawbridge to the dry ground between moats. Ser Davin sat a massive destrier, his blond beard plaited into 2 forks, his eyes suspiciously gentle for a siege commander. He inclined head to Tyrion. "Cousin," Davin greeted. "You stand behind walls mutiny built." Tyrion puffed air. "Mutiny against tyranny is a house cleaning." Davin's gaze flicked to Brynden. "I come bearing my lord grandfather's terms. Surrender River Run, yield the murderer, and all garrison lives. Tully blood will be spared, though holdings forfeit, pending crown adjudication." Brynden chuckled dryly. "Your grandsire overestimates his generosity." "Perhaps," Davin allowed, "but he is swift from grief. Queen Cersei's bier rests beneath the sept of Baelor. The city mourns. My lord grandfather would place noose around the kinslayer's throat before the second moon of her funeral." "Cersei," Tyrion tilted head. "Does city weep? Or only those paid in tears?" Davin flushed. She was queen. She was agony clothed in rubies. Davin's nostrils flared. "Enough. One chance, dwarf. Step out and face Lannister justice. River Run may yet barter leniency." Tyrion considered. "A sweet offer from a bitter hive. Tell Tywin the blackfish cannot be netted. Tell him also the imp sharpened his teeth on sister's bone. He will not dull them on nephew. Begone now, before the moat drinks lion piss." "Oh no, Mal." Davin's eyes hardened. He wheeled his horse. "Very well, prepare." Brynden waited until the riders vanished among willows. "You taunted them." "I taught them," Tyrion answered. "Siege begins tomorrow. Let men sleep tonight with fury not doubt." They returned inside. In warroom lamplight, Tyrion unfurled River Run maps. Grell marked arrow vantage. Ryger listed weak points in the curtain wall. Tyrion proposed Sally tunnels being mined under proposed enemy camp. He once built such beneath Casterly Rock's western cliff as a child's game. Brynden approved. Outside, torches flowered along enemy lines, fireflies of war. Drums thumped an ominous heartbeat across fields. Tyrion stood on battlement near midnight, Oberyn at side. "Tonight," Oberyn murmured. "I recall stories of ghost kings rising from rivers to drown invaders. Let's hope ghosts take lion form." Tyrion smiled. They parted to snatch brief sleep. Tyrion's dreams brimmed with flickering teeth, dagger, crown, moat spikes, and his father's disapproving mouth, turning into Cersei's eyes as they clouded with poison. He woke before dawn, shivering, and donned boiled leather under a chain shirt sewn for his stature. No lion device. Only plain steel, cold by necessity. Ziga horns bleated. From towers, he saw Lannister engineers erecting rams, mantlets, and siege towers of raw pine. Ox carts hauled stone for catapults. Drummers beat cadence for rows of archers, unrolling cloth of gold banners. Tyrion's guts clenched. 10,000 might break walls, but first they must cross moats. Water levels glinted gray, swirling. Brynden gave orders. Loose first volley when enemy within 200 paces. Oil cauldrons kept simmering at each crenelle. Shagga's men posted near western Sally Port ready for night raids. Wooden bridges over Moats, if attempted, would burn. Tyrion added a twist. Barrels of lamp oil spiked with green dye to mimic wildfire. Fear a sharper weapon than flame. As sun crowned the trees, the first assault shambled forward. Armored foot pushing wicker mantlets toward westmost moat. Trumpets from River Run answered with flight of arrows, darkening sky. Shafts clattered like hail. Mantlets shook under hail of oak. Men fell screaming into grass. Some advanced still, locking shields. Lannister engineers dragged timbers to lay across water. But boiling oil cascaded from parapet, charring wood and flesh alike. The moat's mirrored surface shattered in spray as men thrashed, armor dragging them bottomward. Tyrion moved along wall, barking encouragement. One archer, barely beard-sprouted, spilled his quiver into moat in panic. Tyrion slapped his helm. "Aim him again," he growled, "or you feed the fish yourself." The boy knocked arrow, swallowed fear, and loosed. It flew true, dropping a bannerman just yards from bridge. By midday, the field stank of burning pitch. Lannister horns called retreat. River Run cheered, but Tyrion knew first assault served to probe. Evening would bring towers and rams. In council, he advised a feigned sally east at dusk to bite their flank. Brynden assented. Oberyn volunteered to lead with 50 spears. Bronn would escort. Tyrion watched them buckle helms. Envy stirred. Once he'd charged at Blackwater, hiss of wildfire overhead. He craved the raw taste of action again. But he served better here, mined on lattice works of strategy. The east gate opened under shadow of twilight. Oberyn's spears burst out, Shagga's axes behind. They rushed the lion flank, busy assembling a siege tower. Surprise cracked enemy lines. Torches spilled, setting cloth ablaze. Clansmen whooped, axing guy ropes. The half-finished tower toppled, crushing a score of Lannister infantry. Arrow storms from camp responded. Oberyn wheeled, retreat orderly, dragging debris to choke their advance. Bronn lit hay carts, pushing them rolling into tents. Flames licked banners, turning day's gold crimson. They returned amid cheers. Losses minimal, morale priceless. Tyrion greeted Oberyn at gate. The prince's cheek bled a shallow graze. Eyes alight. "A dance to quicken pulse," he said. Night descended. Drums stilled. Tyrion retired to Solar, where a roaring hearth fought chill seeping from stone. He sat with Bronn, pouring small cloves of brandy. "Counting coin already?" Tyrion teased. Bronn shrugged. "Every head I keep attached to your neck is worth triples now. Davin's banner offered 2,000 dragons for you this morning. Gold cloaks and King's Landing whispered 10,000. No. 10. Father values me dearly." Tyrion swallowed brandy. "We'll make him pay more." "And lollies?" Tyrion blinked. He had honestly forgotten the gentle-voiced bride nested someplace in River Run's lady apartments. "Safe, I hope." Bronn nodded. "She tends wounded with septus, girls tougher than silk." Beneath laughter, Tyrion sensed shifting loyalties. Tough indeed. He thanked Bronn sincerely, surprising himself. Days blurred. Sorties, councils, letters. Davin's camp ringed the castle now in horseshoe, but moats thwarted tight encirclement. Supply barges still slid down Red Fork under cover of darkness, guided by Davos riverfolk dotting. Lannister catapults lobbed stone daily. River Run's reply was fewer but targeted. Ammunition of clay pots filled with rotted offal burst among enemy kitchens, disease creeping. On the 7th dawn, a raven from Sunspear bore crimson ribbon. Princess Arianne had set sail with Spear Tower Company and a delegation of maesters to treat. She marched up the Boneway, expecting to reach Storm's End within a month to gather Baratheon exiles, then ride to River Run. Good. Another piece on board. The same morning, the scout towers spotted banners approaching from northeast, not lion red but gray direwolf on ice, stark colors. Riders galloped down slope. Wildlings? No. Outriders clad in white cloaks too light-colored for King's guards. Ser Robin hurried Tyrion to Outer Barbican to greet them. Leading the column rode Sir Bryndon's nephew by marriage no longer, Jon Snow, newly crowned king in the north by rumor. Beside him a tall woman armored like a bear, the Mormont. Behind them a ragged force of 200 horse, each cloak whitened with frost. Jon reined in, gray eyes meeting Tyrion's with surprised warmth. "We came seeking the Blackfish," he said, "but the city sings of dwarfs toppling queens. I had to see if the tales speak truth." Tyrion bowed. "Truth grows wilder in song. But Cersei lies still in cold marble. Welcome, your grace. Probably, though crowns shift." Jon dismounted. "I wear no crown. North wears me." He clasped Tyrion's arm. "Where she is buried." "Baelor's sept," Tyrion replied. "You wish to dance on her grave." Jon's mouth twitched. "Thought maybe spit. But there is more urgent spit for your father." He turned to Bryndon, who arrived, still buckling sword. "Blackfish. Riverrun stands as stone shield between North and Lannister claws. House Stark offers sister kinship. My cousin, Lady Sansa, once wed in name to Tyrion Lannister, travels now under guard to join her brother here. She carries knowledge of the keep's inner passages. Knowledge perhaps to turn this war." Tyrion's breath caught. Sansa, alive and free, coming here? He prayed she did not blame him for heartaches. Bryndon nodded gravely. "Trout and wolf swim one river. You'll have place." They escorted Jon's retinue across drawbridge. In courtyard, Shagga's men greeted northern clans with competitive bellows. Bonds of mountain men and hill clans of the north formed quicker than southern knights dreamt possible. Over ale, both loved axes. That night, council grew crowded. Jon Snow at one end, Oberyn Martell at the other, Bryndon central. Davos, Bronn, Shagga, Maester Veemon, Robin Rhaegar, Desmond Grell, Lyanna Mormont representing Bear Isle, and Tyrion as improbable linchpin. Wine flowed sparingly, siege limited, and conversation sparked. Jon spoke softly, yet each word cut. "The North will not kneel to Tommen so long as Lannister hands clutch his throne. Free him and perhaps we bargain trade of grain for southern bread. But if Tywin marches beyond Riverlands, the North will ride again. We hold Moat Cailin, Last Hearth, Deepwood, roads freeze soon. But wolves run where men sink." "Enos," Oberyn countered. "Dorne kneels seldom either, yet chooses alliances with quills, not claws this time. We desire hostages as pledge. Tommen perhaps, or Lannister heir." Tyrion smiled thinly. "My father will never yield Tommen, but Jaime may yet find paths to send the boy. Let us secure route first." He produced Lysa's frosty letter. "If we gather at the Eyrie, the Vale's needle pricks Tywin's gaze in all directions. Lysa invites me under safe wing. Suppose we travel as envoys, our armies staunch here but leaders high in Vale. We craft regency there, call great council. King's Landing will quake. Then it won't pain." Bryndon stroked silver beard. "March leaders away in siege." "Secrecy," Tyrion answered. "A litter in dawn, small escort through tunnels under Red Fork, ride swift to Maidenpool, ship north to Gulltown, ascend Mountain Goat's Path before Tywin knows. Riverrun stands under my cousin, Edwin Frey's unloved wife. No, under Davos perhaps, and Shagga's men." Davos lifted hands. "I'm sailor, not steward. Sailors count holds, stewards count holds, same sums." Tyrion sipped. "Think on it." Debate curled smoke until late. At last plan gestated. Tyrion, Oberyn, Jon, and Lady Lyanna, with a token dozen, would leave quietly within 2 nights, aiming to reach Eyrie for council. Bryndon remained to command castle. Bronn rode as advance scout with Shagga. Davos oversaw supply lines. Before dawn, Tyrion penned new ravens, one to Margaery Tyrell appealing to her sense of maternal guardianship over Tommen, urging she slip the boy to Vale for rest among mountain air. Whether she risked defying Tywin unknown, yet a seed planted. On rampart, he found Jon Snow leaning against Crenel, moon silvering his dark curls. Tyrion joined him. "The last time we shared a wall, Jon mused. "It looked down on snowfields, not siege fires." "And you were still a bastard," Tyrion quipped. "I remain a bastard to half the world," Jon said. Tyrion's grin faded. "I killed my sister. You found sister after horrors. We both remake names." He glanced at Jon. "Sansa, does she carry hatred?" "She carries scars, not hate. She admires you more than once, though she will not forget you married her." Tyrion sighed. "Neither do I, but I never touched her. She knows." Jon's eyes held quiet storm. "Tommen is but a boy," Sansa reminds us. "She fears flame reaching him. I fear same." Tyrion rubbed temples. "But to free him we may need burn his keep." A silence stretched. Owls hooted from willows along moat. Finally Jon said, "We do what we must. Then answer gods later." 2 days later the secret company slipped out before false dawn. Fog swaddled riverbanks, their boat gliding like ghost. Bronn steered, Davos at tiller, muffling oars squeak with grease. Shagga stalked forest along shore, ready to ambush pursuers. Tyrion sat near prow, Oberyn beside him. Jon opposite, Lyanna curled in fur between North spears. No banners flew, only silent breath clouds. As Riverrun's towers disappeared behind morning gloom, Tyrion's heart panned. He left Brynden with promise to return, but war seldom returns men whole. Still, beyond fear flickered hope. The first warm ember since Cersei's last breath. He would kindle it across hills, valleys, nations, until tyrants everywhere shivered. At Maidenpool, they boarded a narrow keel galley Davos, chartered under false Lysine papers. Eastwind favored, sails billowed. Tyrion leaned on rail as gulls circled. He considered the path ahead: Gull Town, Goat Track, Lysa's falcons, a council inside Skycell's shadow. Farther, a throne shuddering, father raging, city trembling. Steps of a dance like no other. Sea spray kissed his face. He tasted salt, freedom, and faintest sweetness of destiny not yet choked by gold lions. He closed eyes, feeling deck rise, fall. Below, in hold, letters awaited dispatch. To the citadel urging Grand Maester selection. To lords declared neutral offering trade. To brotherhood without banners promising amnesty. He opened eyes to sunrise bursting crimson across horizon, a wound in the sky healing into brilliant gold. Ahead, the Vale's mountains rose faint crystalline blue, as if the world of ice peaks offered ladder to gods. Tyrion Lannister straightened, gripped rail, and smiled into wind that carried smells of pine and promise. Behind him, within Red Keep's blackened corridors, Tywin Lannister studied a map speckled with pins. Each a drop of his blood spilled across realm. His left hand trembled, not with fear but rage, and his council stood silent as he spoke a single vow. "Bring me my son's head, else bring me your own." Outside bells tolled Cersei's dirge, but if one listened close, beneath their mournful clang, rose another music. The clatter of pawns marching off squares they were never meant to leave. The game had changed boards, the pieces, their loyalties. And somewhere amid candlelit nights, between raven's wings and moonlit claws, a single dwarf's footprint stamped a winding trail toward the Eyrie. Each step wrote new law upon Westeros, one neither swords nor crowns could erase. The law of necessary rebellion, the creed of those who refused to bend beneath golden shadows. Beyond the prow, sunlight shattered across the narrow sea miles like thrown coins. Tyrion watched them sink, thinking of debts yet unpaid, of crowns yet recast, of queens that might rise undesired in his wake. He pulled his cloak tighter and whispered to whatever god still heard him, "Guard the boy, guard the realm, and guard us all from who we must become before this ends." The galley sailed on, cutting swift through waves toward empire of mountain and sky, and Tyrion's tale, like the arrow-forging air overhead, soared onward, ever complicated, ever lengthened, never simple again. Pa, pa, PGSQL. Waves drummed a ceaseless cadence against the Lysine galley's hull, the sound neither thunderous nor soft, but persistent, like a distant heartbeat, always there to remind those aboard that the sea was alive and favored no one. Tyrion stood at the bow watching white spray explode against the prow, each burst catching sunlight in prismatic shards. The horizon was a blur of sapphire haze where water met sky. But his thoughts had fled ahead of the ship, climbing invisible mountain spires toward the Eyrie. The journey north up the coast of Westeros passed in stealth. The galley hugged coves and inlets, moving only under low canvas by day and unfurling full sail after dusk, when the pale globe of the moon silvered the waters. Davos Seaworth, barefoot on the quarterdeck, guided the vessel as though born to it. Giving orders in quiet tones, the Lysine captain obeyed with little question. Sailors always recognized mastery of tide and wind, and grudges against smuggler or king mattered less than making port alive. Oberyn Martell roamed the deck like a caged desert cat, spear now lashed in waxed linen to hide its gleam. He rarely slept. Often at night Tyrion found him at the rail, dark eyes on the stars, whispering children's names carried on salt wind. The old wounds of Dorne never scabbed. Lyanna Mormont drilled with a pair of Bear Clan couriers on the poop. The bear of House Mormont roared each time her sword connected with practice shield. Jon Snow spent hours below with maps, discussing mountain goat paths with Davos, or above with Tyrion, sharing black bread and silent question of whether this path would lead to salvation or simply newer graves. On the sixth sunset, gulls appeared, circling the masts and crying news of shore. Gulltown's watchfire winked atop a noble tower, reflected amber across half-mooned harbor. They slipped in at ebb tide, the galley riding low past anchored trading carracks whose crews snored unaware. A single lantern at the prow, and a pouch of gold to the harbor master. Secured berth without record. Ropes whispered. Gangplank thudded. Cloaked shapes hurried down onto the wharf, slick with fish scales. The city lay half asleep, tavern songs muffled behind shutters, the stench of smoked herring clinging to streets like fog. Davos led them through back alleys where rotten planks bridged open drains. 2 mules awaited at a stable whose owner bowed too deeply for a common hostler. Varys' fingerprints, no doubt. Supplies were already bundled. Dried beef, black sausage, coarse oat cakes rolled in cloth, skeins of goat cheese hard enough to hammer nails, and skins of sweet arbor wine. Irony not lost on Tyrion. "We ride before dawn's bell," Davos said, checking girths. "Mountains are cruel after noon. Stones slide and shadows fool eyes." Tyrion eyed the mules. Docile creatures, unlike horses, sensible beasts. He patted the nearest and received a tolerant snort. They traveled light. Oberyn with only spear and a curved Dornish dagger, Jon with Longclaw wrapped in brown sacking, Lyanna with a short sword, no shield. Bronn and 5 hill tribe runners, faces smeared with gray clay, scouted ahead. The rest of Shagga's men remained in hidden camps along the coast, ready to rouse and carve confusion if news of the dwarf reached Tywin's ears. Cobbled roads led to goat paths to bare rock. The sky caught peach at eastern rim, then bled into lapis as they wound upward. The air thinning, growing sharp as new steel. Jon rode near Tyrion, one hand steady on the mule's lead, the other brushing drifted snow off a milestone carved with falcons. "My first climb to the Eyrie ended in chains," Tyrion mused, recalling stone cells and sky beyond the moon door. "May this arrival prove gentler." "That depends on my aunt," Jon answered grimly. The high road, infamous for brigands, lay strangely empty. Word of Lysa's sentries and the Vales, sudden vigilance had pushed cutthroats into deeper passes. Still, eyes watched from tree line. Jon sensed them, Lyanna scented them, and occasionally small stones skittered down slopes where unseen mountain clansmen shadowed their progress. They reached the first way castle, stone, by twilight. Massive oaken doors barred entry, but Davos displayed a copper medallion etched with the Arryn falcon, and the gates creaked open. Torches sputtered in mountain wind. Ser Alba Royce, gray-beard plaited in Vale style, received them with stiff courtesy. "Lady Arryn expects Lord Tyrion only," Royce said, voice echoing under arch. "The rest will wait at Sky, 2 castles above." "That was not our understanding," Oberyn replied, leaning on spear. "We climbed together." Royce's eyes flicked to the Dornish colors. The Prince of Dorne is welcome once Lady Arryn extends invitation. Until then, orders stand. Jon stepped forward. I am blood of Arryn through my mother's sister. Tell my aunt her nephew seeks to unburden her of threats on every side. Royce hesitated, then signaled a page. I will send word. But the mountain's throat tolerates few tongues. Rooms await, fires warm. Tension ebbed. They dismounted in courtyard, half carved into rock, half built with granite blocks welded by frost. Tyrion remembered this place, where horses balked and Lady Lysa's party first rid him of dignity. Now he walked inside upright, escorted to a cell not unlike the black cells. Small but hearth-lit and blankets thick. Sleep eluded him. Flames painted the ceiling in restless shapes. He rose, wrapped himself in a fur mantle, and padded onto a narrow balcony that overhung sheer darkness. Stars glittered like ice chips blown across velvet. Somewhere below wolves howled, and were answered by others far to the east. A voice. She will try to turn you. Oberyn emerged from adjoining balcony, boots crunching thin snow. Arryn woman feasts on fear. Then I starve her, Tyrion said. Breath puffed cold into air. My worth to her is choice. Join us or face Tywin alone. Choices bruise. Oberyn's smile glimmered faint. When she sees your uncle's host at gates someday, she may blame the dwarf who gave her hope. We are all to blame eventually, Tyrion murmured. Dawn brought summons. A pair of lanky guards in Arryn livery led Tyrion through corkscrew stair, past an indoor garden of frost-burnt ivy, onto a small yard where a winch cage hung poised. He stepped in. Chains rattled. Iron rattled. Sky rose around him swiftly as stone shrank. Harsh wind bit his cheeks. Snowflakes, few at first, drifted, then gathered into whispering sleet as the cage halted at Sky, the second way castle. Jon, Oberyn, and Lyanna joined him there. Royce relented to combine prestige. They drank hot goat's milk, then climbed again. Mules left behind. Narrow steps chipped into cliff, wound upward, each twist revealing a vaster emptiness. Clouds rolled beneath their boots. Tyrion's legs burned, lungs raw. At last the final winch rattled them to snow. Smallest way castle. Perched like an owl's nest. The path beyond tilted up so steeply even mountain goats seldom dared it. Men crawled on all fours, gripping iron staples hammered into rock. But the Eyrie appeared suddenly. A swan of a castle. Walls white as new frost. Towers piercing ragged clouds. Memories washed over Tyrion. The moon door, Lysa's shrill laughter. Sweet little Robert flinging straw knights. He shuddered. The portcullis rose. Courtyard bustled with knights sporting moon and falcon, guards drilling pike maneuvers. Torches roared. Snow devils whirled past stables. Atop a marble stair, Lady Lysa Arryn waited, draped in pale mink, her auburn hair streaked with silver. Beside her stood a lanky youth, cheeks blotched from cold. Lord Robert, no longer quite 8, clutching a feathered pillow against his chest. Lord Tyrion, Lysa called, voice echoing brittle across frost. How bold to scale my mountain without writ. Tyrion bowed. Boldness is all my legs allow, my lady. But I bring offers fit for falcons. Security perched high and vengeance swooping low. Her eyes narrowed, flitting to Jon. And nephew? Bearing northern treachery, perhaps? Jon inclined head. Blood calls for blood, aunt. We seek counsel, not seizure. Lysa examined Oberyn and Lyanna with suspicion, then gestured. Follow, if knees endure. Marble halls gleamed, servants scurrying. They entered high hall. Moon door hidden beneath plank cover. A single hearth blazed, throwing gold upon white pillars. Lysa sat the weeping throne. Robert shuffled to her side, nose running. Speak, she said. Tyrion stepped forward, ignoring ache. Queen Cersei lies dead. Tywin Lannister hunts my head to silence resistance. I come with Prince Oberyn Martell, Jon Snow, king in the north to some, and Lady Lyanna Mormont to propose a regency free of lions. The veil, untouched by war, stands to guide realm back to peace if you but open talons. Lysa's laughter tinkled. Regency? My son is Lord of the Vale. We need no throne of swords to rule our mountain. Mansion. Yet the mountain cannot stand if seas of soldiers crash against it, Tyrion said. Tywin's armies will march once River Run falls, or is circumvented. He will secure the Eyrie to close fist on North and Dorne alike. Better to pick allies now. Jon approached the dais. Mother named you sister dearer than sunlight. Honor her. Stand with me. Lysa's gaze softened. Your mother, gentle she was, but she died because Southrons played their game. Oberyn rested spearbutt on marble. Then end the game. Slice board in half. Stand with us, and we ring King's Landing with mountains on 3 sides. Stone, sand, and snow. Nay. Robert yawned, head drooping. Lysa stroked his hair. Why should I trust the dwarf who once put my son at Sky-Door's edge? Tyrion's voice dropped, private yet cutting. Because that dwarf saved your son's life by demanding combat that exposed your late husband's poisoners. Because I hold secrets Tywin would kill to bury, including which banners truly spilled Jon Arryn's blood. Ally, with us and I share them. Silence fell. Hearth crackled. Wind keened outside. Lysa's fingers whitened on Throne's arm. Finally she spoke. Prove these secrets and the Vale's knights will descend in storm. Until then, guest right holds. We shall test your words in the Eyrie snows. Tyrion bowed. Victory tentative. He turned away, but Robert tugged his sleeve. Did you bring me a present? The boy lisped. Tyrion knelt painfully. A puzzle box from Lysa, he improvised, padding pockets carved with dragons. We'll open it after supper. Robert smiled faintly, wiped nose on sleeve. That evening, fires blazed in 30 hearths to welcome both winter's breath and distinguished guests. A feast of mountain goat stew, beetroots, chestnuts, and cloudberry tarts warmed spirits. Minstrels played while Oberyn shared Dornish wine with Sir Nestor Royce, forging small ties. Tyrion found a quiet corner near arched window, jotting notes for confession Lysa demanded. He would reveal Littlefinger's part in Jon Arryn's death, but only enough to draw her into alliance. The full ledger of chaos belonged later to the great council he envisioned at Old Town, perhaps, after war's dust cleared. Jon paced, unable to sit long, restless as direwolf caged. Lyanna teased him. Your feet wear stone faster than war. He half smiled. His heart clearly tugged toward Night's Watch duties still unfulfilled, but vengeance for family steered him south. Days rolled. Tyrion drafted articles of regency. Lysa quibbled clauses, fearing loss of son's autonomy. Oberyn conducted spear dances in courtyard. Vale knights, gawking, taught. Jon corresponded with Brynden via Raven. River Run held. But Davon's catapults flung corpses now. Plague threatening. Supplies tightened. Stark outrunners near Moat Cailin harried lion caravans out of Fairmarket, buying time. On the 5th day a bird arrived from White Harbor. Jaime Lannister had crossed neck with 100 lances, escorting Lady Sansa Stark. They steered for the Eyrie, seeking safe harbor. Tyrion exhaled relief and terror both. Jaime alive, unbroken by father perhaps. Sansa walking into another nest, but maybe this time safer. 2 nights later horns echoed along mountain passes. Lanterns bobbed in lower courts as gatekeepers ushered freezing travelers. Tyrion rushed with Jon to greet them. Snow dusted Jaime's gold hair. He removed helm, face drawn yet determined. Sansa, cloaked in white wolf fur, descended from palanquin, eyes bright with disbelief to see Tyrion. She paused before him. Memories flickered. Shy bride, broken lady, fugitive dove. Lord Tyrion, she whispered. He bowed deeply. Lady Stark, Sansa, I am gladder of nothing in life than your freedom. She managed to smile, then embraced Jon fiercely. Jaime watched, guilt shadowing features. In high hall introductions resumed. Jaime knelt to Lady Lysa, offered sword in good faith. I come as envoy, not foe. King Tommen longs for shielding from cruel hands. My father no longer controls him. Queen Margaery holds his trust. She sends plea, Join Regency. End bloodshed. Manasimunsi. Tyrion's heart soared. Margaery seized moment. He stepped beside brother. If Margaery sends Tommen north under guard, we can seek counsel here safe from lions. Lysa wavered. Jaime's parchment bore Queen's seal of rose entwined about crown. She read, lips pursed. Then Littlefinger emerged from side door, summoned quietly by Lysa earlier. He wore dove-gray doublet, mocking neutrality. His smile cut. My lady, to harbor Boy King is to declare open war on Lord Tywin. Tyrion moved between them. War, already declared. We choose where sword falls. Littlefinger's eyes glinted. I propose alternative. Keep Boy in King's Landing but name neutral regents. One from each great house. Safer than dragging Tommen over cliffs. Oberyn laughed. Neutral? You speak as though Crown's never hungry. Petyr spread hands. I merely caution risk. Lysa bit lip. Petyr counsels caution, Lord Tyrion. Tyrion's gaze bore into Littlefinger. He saw the man who orchestrated war to amass coin and secrets. Lord Baelish fears coins lost under New Order. Nothing more. He forgets we hold secret of his venture in Jon Arryn's death. Gasps, Dottie. Lysa stiffened. Petyr's eyes chilled. Dangerous lie. Tyrion bowed to Lysa. I promise proof. Ask your birds who last visited Pycelle's rookery before Jon Arryn sickened. Ask midwives who attended your lord's final hour who paid them after. Even now Petyr's vaults at Gulltown hold ledgers, skiffs and captains bearing Lannister gold to your husband's squire. Littlefinger recovered quick smile. Speculation. Jaime stepped forth. I saw letters in father's desk linking Baelish payment to Sir Hugh, the squire who died in Tourney. My father believed silence cheaper than justice. Lysa trembled. Tears glimmered. She turned on Petyr. Is this true? Littlefinger reached for her hand. Lysa. She recoiled as if scorched. Answer. Silence rippled. Finally he spoke softly. I acted for us. For your son's future. Jon Arryn would have torn Robert from your breast, sent him as ward to Dragonstone. I protected you. Lysa covered face. Moments passed. She lowered hands. Newfound steel shone. Guards. Knights stepped forward. Take Lord Baelish to Sky Cells until my nephew's council rules. Petyr's mouth twisted. He did not fight. As guards escorted him, his gaze found Sansa, pleading, wounded. She turned away. The hall buzzed. Lysa straightened. I throw veil behind Regency, she declared. My knights fly at dawn. Council shall convene now, with King Tommen's arrival. And may gods forgive those who shed innocent blood to reach their petty thrones. Exhaustion descended but excitement crackled. Plans accelerated. Ravens to Highgarden instructing Queen to escort Tommen to Gulltown by sea. Ravens to Dorne confirming road clear. Ravens to River Run promising relief. The Eyrie became hive of scribes. Tyrion found Sansa in a snow garden behind slim wall. She sculpted a wolf from powdery snow, fingers red. He approached. Moon lit her face ethereal. You saved me once, she said without turning. No one else would. I tried, he answered, voice small. Will you save us all now? He hesitated. I will try again, but my hands deliver both mercy and murder. She met his eyes. Then deliver me truth. Are you the monster grown-ups whisper? He shook head. Some days, I wish I were. She touched his cheek, surprising warmth. Do not wish that. The realm has monsters enough. Days telescoped. Veiled knights mustered on snow-sheeted plateaus. Banners of Royce, Redfort, Waynwood fluttering. Northmen drilled with them, bare-cloaked among moon mountains. Oberyn's Dornish outriders climbed passes from south. Sun-pierced banners defiant against snow. The Eyrie thrummed with clamor of disparate nations chewing same meal of determination. One crisp morn, white gull sails speckled bay far below. Queen Margaery's escort glided into Gulltown harbor, carrying Tommen. Sir Loras Tyrell, 100 Tyrell guards. And unexpected, Grand Maester Gorman, elected after Pycelle's quiet demise from heart pangs. They rode mountain track under Arryn banners. Tommen, bundled in quilts, looked smaller than rumor. Tyrion greeted him courtyard. The boy's eyes watered from cold. "Uncle," he asked. Tyrion knelt. "I am here, Tommen. No harm will come." Marguerite curtsied to Lysa, radiating queenly grace even in fleece. "For the realm," she said simply. Lysa squeezed her hands. In that grasp, new alliance sealed. The high hall expanded with tables for assembly. Jaime chaired as neutral voice, refusing official vote, but steering discourse. Tyrion presented charter, triumvirate regency of Queen Marguerite, Lady Lysa, and Prince Doran, represented by Arianne until arrival. Jon Snow and Brynden Tully confirmed as Northern and River advisors. Oberyn Martell as Southern Marshal. Sir Davos as Master of Ships. Grand Maester Gorman Keeper of Oaths. Tommen remained king under tutelage in the Eyrie, until capital pacified. Debate fierce. Lysa balked at Dornish. Oberyn insisted, Jon mediated. Sansa proposed hostages of goodwill, each regent to place heir under other's care. Lysa shocked but agreed when she saw power of parity. Marguerite placed younger brother Willis in River Run. Lysa pledged Robert to Sunspear once rode safe. Doran would send Quentyn north. Ties woven thicker than deceit. Charter ink dried beneath 7 signatures, each quill sealed with colored wax. Falcon blue, rose green, Sunspear copper, Direwolf gray, Trout red blue, Lion gold signed by Jaime. On behalf of House, Lannister loyal to crown. But not tyranny. And dwarf imprint. Ravens soared with news. Across Westeros small folk whispered. A council above clouds defied the Lion of Casterly Rock. Some cheered, others feared civil war's new head. Tywin, receiving scroll on field before River Run, read in silence, then crushed parchment. He ordered immediate assault, with rams delivered overnight. Ziga again roared, but Brynden's men held. Winter deepened. Snows crept south, clogging roads, hampering Tywin's supply. Vale spears descended, harrying flanks. Oberyn led strike on line baggage train near the Trident, capturing entire wagon of pachists. Mountains thundered with avalanche that buried a third of Prester's infantry. Whether nature or sabotage, unclear. Brynden sent word. Enemy lines fray. In King's Landing chaos. Kevan Lannister attempted to steady small council, but whispers of Tommen's absence inflamed mobs. Faith militant, secretly restored by High Septon before his poisoning, marched cobblestones, demanding purging of sin. City starved as trade convoys dwindled. Tywin realized stranglehold shifting. He recalled Davin, abandoning siege lines mere leagues from breaching. Brynden celebrated but cautioned. Lion retreats to pounce anew. At Eyrie, Tyrion toiled on next move. How to retake capital with least blood. Jaime suggested negotiations with gold cloaks. Marguerite offered bribes. Jon argued storm of banners would quicken surrender. Oberyn favored infiltration through secret tunnels. Tyrion once escaped with Varys. That sparked memory. Wildfire caches still unspent beneath Sept of Baelor. If father grows desperate, Tyrion said in council, he may choose the Mad King's path, torch the city rather than yield. Silence. Sansa paled. Jaime's jaw clenched. He remembered Dragonfire. We must seize those stores, Jaime said. Plan crystallized. Small vanguard slip into city by river sewer Davos knew. Capture Alchemist's Guild. Secure Wildfire. To follow. Fleet from Gull Town, Stormland's longships, and Dornish galleys converge at Blackwater, landing Regency host South Bank while Vale Knights ride King's Road. Tyrion volunteered for vanguard. Jaime insisted join. Davos commanded river approach. Jon offered Northmen, but Tyrion urged he lead siege lines later. Sansa begged. Go disguised as Septa to gather belly of city's hunger. Lysa refused. Sansa relented. Nights before departure, Tyrion visited Littlefinger in Sky Cell. Snow drifted through lattice, dusting Petyr's shoulders. He shivered in thin cloak. "We could have been friends," Petyr said, teeth chattering. "Friendship built on dead men's backs," Tyrion replied. "All thrones built on bones." Tyrion studied him. "You may yet live if you guide treasury accounts to council." Petyr smirked. "You think coin grows without chaos?" "Chaos now has new ladder," Tyrion said. "Climb or fall." Petyr's eyes dulled, but he whispered locations of hidden mints in Gulltown tunnels. Tyrion nodded. "Tell more upon trial." Truth buys rope's length. He left Petyr with brazier lit, uncertain whether warmth or mockery. Spring thaw approached, though wind still cut. On a moonless night, Vanguard departed East Gate on shaggy Galloway ponies. Tyrion wore drab cloak, hood shading mismatched eyes. Jaime rode beside, golden beard dyed walnut brown. Davos led 15 oarsmen hauling folding skiff. They reached river's mouth, crept along mudflats, launched skiff. Oars dipped silent. Fog curled thick, muffling sounds of distant city. Rot stench thickened. Sewers yawned black. They slipped beneath tide grate. Davos loosened with acid days prior. Darkness swallowed them. Torches hooded glowed dim. Labyrinthine tunnels echoed drip drip. Rats fled. Sludge waded waist deep. Tyrion gagged but pressed on. Memory guided. Left at cracked arch, right at weir with lion gargoyle, straight until scent of myrrh from alchemist's vent. A great barred path. Jaime, quiet killer now, wedged crowbar, muscles flexing. Iron groaned, snap. They climbed ladder into subcellar lit by eerie green. Wildfire. Barrels stacked 8 high, glass candles flickering unnatural jade. A lone pyromancer dozed on stool. Brawn, lurking among vanguard, clamp hand over man's mouth. Steel flashed. The man slept deeper forever. Tyrion's breath trembled at thought how easily father might have ordered firestorm. They sealed doors, posted guards. Ravens dispatched to Aerie. City's fire captured. Next night, Tyrell galleys appeared from the south, banners hidden, dropping anchors near Smuggler's Cove. Davos signaled with covered lantern. Gold cloaks, on wharf corruptible. Pouches of coin changed allegiance quietly. By dawn, Crown's landing piers swarmed with Tyrell and Stormland's men wearing tabards inside out to disguise numbers until signal. Simultaneously, Vale Knights descended King's Road, entering Gate of the Gods as gold cloaks there opened portcullis. Small folk poured streets, confused but hopeful. Broadsheets written by Varys agents proclaimed new regency for peace. Bells rang not alarm, but welcome. Tywin, roused in Tower of the Hand, found Red Keep already infiltrated. Jaime led contingent through postern. Father and son confronted at base of stair where once Tyrion faced shackles. "Stand aside," Jaime urged. "Your war ended." Tywin's eyes flamed. "Yours ends with my command." He reached for sword but slow. Age and rage dulled. Jaime stepped, disarmed him fluidly. Blade clattering marble. "For Tommen, father," Jaime said, voice aching. "For realms you bled." Guards loyal to Tywin surrendered, seeing wildfire barrels in courtyard ringed by Dornish spears. The Lion of Lannister, once roar of realm, found himself caged. Tapestries smelled of smoke and dust. In throne room, Tommen entered, flanked by Margaery, Sansa, and Tyrion. Margaery knelt, presenting crown. Tommen's hands shook but voice steady. "Lords and ladies, I accept guidance of council until my majority. Bloodshed ends today." Cheers rolled, uncertain at first, then fervent as horns beyond walls proclaimed ceasefire. Small folk surged to Red Keep gates calling for bread, not blood. Grain wagons already rolled from Stormlands and Reach. 7 days later, in Sept rebuilt hastily after riots, great council convened. Lords paramount or envoys filled marble pews. Grand Maester Gorman recited accords. Tywin, stripped of hand's chain, and commanded to retire to Casterly Rock under guard, gave final glance at children. Jaime resolute. Tyrion exhausted, golden dream unraveling. No words passed. Lysa returned to Aerie with Robert. Vale safe. Oberyn escorted Tommen south to Sunspear for solar cure. Fresh air and sand. Jon rode north with Sansa to oversee harvest, promising return when snow receded. Margaery remained queen consort but swore to hold no office save guardian. Peace. Fragile as spider silk. Stretched. On quiet evening, amidst still smoldering capital, Tyrion walked Blackwater's embankment. Wildflowers sprouted where wildfire once devoured hosts. He sipped Rhenish, watching dusk-purple paint's river. Footsteps. Jaime joined, leaning on parapet. "You won," Tyrion snorted. "We survived, winning yet to judge. Father will brood," Jaime said. "But maybe learn." Lannisters seldom learn, just wait. Tyrion sighed. Yet world changed. A boy king raised by many mothers, realms guided by counsel, not singular sword. And a dwarf who killed a queen, Jaime added softly. Tyrion stared at ripples. "I feel weight each dawn, but I see children laugh without fear, bakers open stalls again. Perhaps one murder spared thousands." Jaime clapped his shoulder. "History will debate. History always does." Tyrion drained cup, set it on stone. "Come, brother. Tomorrow we begin counting debts, filling granaries, drafting laws no lion roars above." Together, they climbed hill toward city glowing with new lamps. Each lantern lit by hands of folk daring hope again. Overhead the first stars emerged, faint yet steadfast, mirroring the flicker within Tyrion's chest. A boyhood wish that one day he might matter beyond ridiculed stature. He had mattered now, whether for good or ill the realm would decide. But as wind stirred banners of falcon, rose, sunspear, wolf, trout, and yes, even humbled lion, Tyrion believed the tapestry they wove might just withstand the tearing claws of tomorrow. Beneath the same firmament, far away at River Run, Shagga son of Dulf tossed yet another lion helm onto a growing pyramid of trophies, and laughed deep into the night, certain the half-man would soon send for more goats. And that, thought Shagga as moonlight glinted on his axe, was the sweetest promise any chieftain could wish. Yeah, and shallow. PG, SQL. The first spring in years when snow did not linger and war did not blacken the skies over Westeros, arrived in silence. It was a fragile peace, every dawn uncertain, but every dusk a victory of sorts. Tyrion Lannister remained in King's Landing, unwilling to return to Casterly Rock, unable to join the North, and perhaps undesired in the West. His life was no longer one of power, but of necessity, patching the wounds left by a generation of Lannisters, guiding the Regency Council, and discovering what could be built from broken things. The city had changed with the Council's rule. Where once lion banners snarled from every tower and sullen gold cloaks patrolled on edge, now the banners of House, Tyrell, Martell, Arryn, and Stark, fluttered side by side with the Baratheon crown. Bread flowed more freely than blood. The markets brimmed with spring onions, river trout, and olive oil, tokens of the Reach and the South. Margaery Tyrell's charities kept hungry children alive, and the faith's bells tolled more often for marriages and births than executions. But fear remained, as did suspicion. Tommen, king in name, boy in heart, studied with Maester Gorman each morning, and rode in the palace yards with Sansa, Lyanna Mormont, and little Robert Arryn under the careful eyes of the Queen's Guard and their new Lord Commander, Brienne of Tarth. Jon Snow had returned north, promising the Regency the grain of 3 valleys in exchange for peace, and the slow return of Stark exiles. The North held itself apart, but did not threaten. Dorne's banners lingered in the city for a month more, Oberyn Martell wielding both diplomacy and quiet threat, until the Council honored every word promised to Sunspear. Tyrion spent long hours in the Tower of the Hand, not as Hand, not even as Lord, but as the dwarf who killed a queen. The council chamber felt strange without the looming presence of Tywin or the venom of Cersei. Lady Lysa presided with a calm severity, ruling for her son in the Vale, but slow to compromise. Margaery handled most matters of bread and coin with deft ease, while Arianne Martell, finally arrived in silken sunlight, sat as Dorne's voice, always pressing for justice, never forgetting the blood of Elia and her children. Jaime, stripped of title but not respect, became the city's shield. He trained new knights, shared counsel with Brienne and Sir Loras, and saw to the security of Tommen, whom he called nephew, and sometimes, in private, son. His hair grayed at the temples, but his eyes, though haunted, carried a gentler light. One morning, as bells announced a new ship's arrival from the Reach, Tyrion finished a ledger in his solar, and went to the window, watching a city that moved without his sister's shadow or his father's will. The square below hummed with market traders, Tully and Tyrell guards at the gates. He remembered the Red Keep in the days of madness, the burning of Blackwater, the blood on marble. Now the walls glimmered in sunlight, and the wind off the sea was clean. Bronn arrived unannounced, swagger undiminished by his new lordship, Stokeworth his in all but name, lollies at his side, now plump with their second child. "You look less a prisoner and more a banker every day," he grinned, eyeing Tyrion's parchment stack. "Bankers live longer than prisoners," Tyrion replied. "If only they drank as well." Bronn chuckled, pouring wine from a flagon he'd brought himself. "Any word from Shaga? Or has the half-man forgotten the mountain clans? Shaga sent a goat and a helmet last month. He says he'll bring the rest when the snows melt, if he hasn't eaten them." "Not him," Bronn snorted. "Give me city folk, at least they only try to stab you for a coin, not a joke." He lounged in a chair. "The council grows restless, you know." Tyrion nodded. "Restless is better than terrified. The longer they bicker, the less they bleed." Bronn's smile faded. "Trouble's brewing. You've heard the whispers. Faith militant, the sparrows flock, old wounds never heal, just scab over." Tyrion sighed, massaging the bridge of his nose. "I have. There are more septons in the city than fleas, and half of them think themselves kings. Maberating Shagar. And the other half want you dead for Cersei." Tyrion shrugged. "They'll have to wait in line. I have more pressing enemies. Boredom, paperwork, and the lack of a good whorehouse." Bronn guffawed. "Council's looking to make you master of coin. A fate worse than trial by combat. You're the only one who can balance a book and a bottle." Tyrion rolled his eyes, but pride flickered deep down. "Tell them I'll take it, if they double my stipend and let me keep the job long enough to retire in peace." "Peace?" Bronn raised a brow. "You're a Lannister, not in your blood." The two men drank as sunlight crept across the stone. Tyrion thought of old debts and newer friends, the strange life of the man who ended a queen, and wondered how long such a peace could last. That evening, the council gathered in the throne room. The Iron Throne itself stood empty, guarded by Brienne. Tommen watched from the dais, his feet swinging nervously. Tyrion entered last, carrying the red ledger of the realm. Lysa Arryn opened with news from the Vale. Bandit raids repulsed, mountain passes open, harvests good. Arianne reported Dornish water gardens already filled with the children of fallen enemies, as promised. Margaery raised the issue of the faith's restlessness. "The High Septon seeks an audience, my lords. The common folk want justice for the blood that's been shed." Tyrion read the room. He felt the edge of risk, the sense that peace was a high wire and any wrong step might shatter everything. "Invite him," Tyrion said, surprising himself. "Let the faith speak." The High Septon arrived the next morning. He was thin, with sharp eyes and a mouth that never quite smiled. He bowed low. "Your graces, your lords, the gods see much, but hear little. They listen now for atonement. The people whisper that the crimes of the great houses still stain the city. Queen Cersei's death cries for expiation. The kinslayer walks free. The poor starve while the rich feast." Lysa Arryn frowned. "The kinslayer saved the realm from a worse tyrant." The Septon shook his head. "Blood for blood is not the god's way. The realm must show penance. Open the gates, feed the poor, build again the septs, and let the people see their king walk among them, unguarded." Margaery exchanged a glance with Tyrion. "Tommen will walk the city, under my care, and the city's love." The Septon inclined his head. "Then let the gods' justice be satisfied." After the audience, Tyrion and Margaery walked the gardens together. "He wants more than penance," Tyrion said quietly. "The faith wants power." Margaery nodded. "But if we give them the illusion, we may keep the reality." Tyrion smiled. "You were always the clever one. You flatter. Only as much as you deserve." He stopped, turning to face her. "Can you keep Tommen safe?" She nodded, her eyes shining. "I can. But who will keep you safe, my lord?" Tyrion spread his hands. "I have survived worse. The city is quiet. The small folk do not hate me. Most do not even remember the old queen. And the new order holds. For now," Margaery said. "But a storm always comes." That storm came days later, not from the faith or from Tywin's remnant loyalists, but from the sea. Ravens from Old Town warned of sails, ironborn, under a new king, sailing north and west and raiding the western shores. Sail fleets followed, eager for plunder as the Lord's armies remained scattered or reduced. The council called emergency session. Lysa wanted to recall the Vale's knights, but Oberyn, still lingering, ever restless, urged striking south to Dorne, defending the passes. Brienne advised sending the Golden Company, now leaderless, back to the Stepstones, but Jaime disagreed. "We must defend the capital and the western coast," he said. "The Iron Fleet grows bolder with every unpunished raid." Tyrion remembered the tales of reavers at Lannisport in his youth. "We must send word to the north. Jon will not let the coast fall." Ravens sped out, White Harbor, Bear Island, Deepwood, Motte. The north answered with ships and swords, but the sea was cruel, and the Ironborn relentless. Towns burned, and tales of Greyjoy cruelty spread. Tyrion heard whispers of a Kraken king who claimed to wield the magic horn, and he remembered the old prophecies. When Krakens rose, kings would fall. Spring turned to summer, and battles flickered up and down the western coast. Margaery's cousin Garland led Reach fleets to the Shield Islands. The Martells sailed north. Jaime and Brienne drilled new squires in the city, sending out green men to reinforce the garrisons. Sansa organized food for refugees, her patience and kindness winning hearts in every ward. Tyrion, named Master of Coin at last, wrestled with debts. He borrowed from Braavos, cajoled Tyrell and Martell gold, squeezed the Lannister mines, and established a city mint. Gold flowed if thin, but no one starved. For the first time since Robert's rebellion, the city thrived. The Ironborn threat persisted but never broke through to the capital. Their king, Euron, a shadow in the fog, harried and vanished, but could not claim victory. In the quiet moments, rare but real, Tyrion sat by the Blackwater, book in hand, a cup of arbor gold at his elbow, and watched the lights of the city glimmer against the dark water. He remembered Shay's laughter, Sansa's tears, the taste of Cersei's dying breath. He wondered if the peace he'd won was real, or just a lull between storms. But for now, the city was alive, and he, the Kinslayer, was alive with it. One evening, Jon Snow returned, gray and thinner, but alive. He and Sansa embraced on the steps, and the city cheered. Jon brought news. The north was secure, the wall held, and wildlings had settled, trading furs and silver. The Night's Watch was small, but not gone. In the council chamber, Jon and Tyrion drank late, sharing stories of old wounds. "Do you regret it?" Jon asked quietly. "Meaning, Cersei, the war, all of it?" Tyrion stared into his wine. "Regret is a coat I wear, but it does not keep me warm. I did what I must. We all did. Will it last, this peace?" Tyrion shrugged. "It may, if men like you lead. If men like me counsel, not rule." Jon smiled. "I was never meant to rule." "None of us were," Tyrion replied. "But here we are." Another year passed. Tommen grew into his crown. Sansa became the city's heart, Lady of Winterfell and Lady of King's Landing both. Margaery ruled as queen in all but name. Oberyn returned to Dorne, where Arianne ruled in his stead, and Lysa grew old and content in her sky castle. Robert grown tall and gentle, if a little strange. Jaime and Brienne rode the King's Road often, keeping the peace. Bronn, richer than most lords, ran his own small council of sellswards, but never truly left Tyrion's side. Tyrion, now master of coin, grew gray and a little fat. He found pleasure in the city's music, the laughter of children, the taste of a good apple, or a rare bottle of summer wine. He no longer dreamed of Casterly Rock. His home was here, in the city he had once nearly burned, then saved with blood and wit. The city remembered. When children asked who killed the Mad Queen, who saved the king, who built the new peace, the old ones told them. A dwarf, a monster, a Lannister. Tyrion, who killed a queen to save a king, who loved a city more than himself, who turned kinslayer for a greater mercy. Sometimes, in the small hours before dawn, Tyrion walked the ramparts, staring out at the river, the city, the world he had shaped. He thought of Cersei, not as the queen, but as the sister who once played with him beneath the rock. He wondered if he had done right, if peace ever truly paid for blood. In the end, as bells rang for a festival, as lanterns lit the sky above the city, as the people cheered the king and queen, and the children ran wild in the squares, Tyrion Lannister closed his eyes and let the sound of peace wash over him. For the first time in his life, he was not afraid. For the first time, he let himself believe he might be forgiven. Not by gods or history, but by the city he had bled for, and by himself. The city endured. The tale of Tyrion Lannister became legend, sometimes as villain, more often as savior, always as the kinslayer who gave the realm a second chance. And when the day came, years later, that the city's bells tolled for Tyrion's passing, the crowds filled the streets, not in hate, not in fear, but in memory and in hope. For they knew that once, when the world tottered on the edge of madness, a broken man with a sharp tongue and a tired heart had chosen to end a queen's tyranny, and in doing so, had given them a new beginning. And so, the small folk of King's Landing, the lords of the realm, and the children who ran between the market stalls, told the story again and again, that peace is never given, always taken, that monsters can be merciful, and that sometimes, the smallest man leaves the largest mark. In the deep of night, as the city slept, the wind caught the banners on the Red Keep's towers and made them dance. Somewhere, in the darkness, the memory of a lion's laugh drifted on the breeze, and the city, unconquered, rested in its hard-won peace. Kajam. PGSQL. The years that followed were marked not by the thunder of war, but by the slow, persistent labor of rebuilding. And Tyrion Lannister's name, once spoken only with suspicion or scorn, became the thread that bound the memory of the war's ending to the fragile peace that followed. Each spring, he walked the city walls as he once had his hand, though now he was simply Tyrion of the Red Keep, master of coin, occasional arbiter, and sometime confidant of those who truly ruled. The Red Keep was never again what it had been in his youth, neither nest of vipers nor den of lions, but a council chamber, a palace of compromise. The tapestries that once proclaimed the victories of Aegon or Robert were replaced with new scenes. Tommen on his palfrey, amid a crowd of city children, the opening of the rebuilt sept, the banners of wolf, rose, trout, sun, and falcon fluttering on the high towers. The Iron Throne stood, but now the king's seat was often the council table, and the king himself more often in the gardens than on the dais. Tommen grew into his crown gently, his kindness tempered by the lessons of blood that had soaked his childhood. His friends were not lords' sons alone, but the children of the city, stable boys, bakers' daughters, orphans rescued by Sansa's tireless network. Margaery mothered him and guided him, but let him choose his own path. Jaime, ever watchful, taught him swordplay and how to tell when a man lied with a smile. Sansa became Lady of Winterfell and of King's Landing both. She spent her winters in the north, summers in the south, and every letter she sent Tyrion was a small light in his evenings. He read her careful words by lamplight, sometimes chuckling at her dry observations of northern weather, sometimes moved nearly to tears by her confessions of loneliness. But he never again felt the ache of shame. She had forgiven him. He knew that. They met each spring when she returned to the capital, walking the gardens together. Sometimes they laughed over memories of a wedding that had bound them both in chains. Sometimes she laid her hand on his arm and spoke of futures she hoped for, children who would never know the taste of fear, sisters and brothers who could live as themselves. The city changed too. The faith militant never fully regained the strength Cersei had once foolishly granted it, but neither was it powerless. The High Septon, seeing which way the wind blew, devoted the order to soup kitchens and orphanages. When the small folk suffered, it was the Seven's hands that fed them. And gold, of course, from the Tyrells and the crown. Sells-words still haunted the alleys. But most now wore the blue and white of the city watch, which Brienne and Bronn had shaped into something resembling justice. The days when a merchant could be shaken down for a bribe or a gold cloak would drag a girl to the dungeons were, if not vanished, at least rare. Tyrion managed the realm's money with a mixture of fear, creativity, and the hard-learned cynicism of a man who had been poor, rich, and hunted in turn. The debts to Bravos were not paid off, but renegotiated. Arbor wines for interest, reach grains for years when the city's fields failed. The mines of Casterly Rock, at last exhausted, were traded for Dornish glass and sand, for Manderley silver and fine crafts from the Vale. When Bravos sent its bankers to collect, they left with not only payments but alliances. A seat at the council, even, for a time. The king's justice was no longer the Mountain or the Hound, but a small court of learned men and women. Sometimes Sansa herself presided, her reputation for fairness soon eclipsing even that of her brother Jon. On market days, Tyrion would walk among the people, unnoticed or simply unremarked. He liked it better that way. He listened to bakers haggling, children laughing, the soft chatter of old men at chess. He visited the rebuilt brothels, not as a customer. Age had cooled those fires, but as a friend and advisor, ensuring that the women who worked there were no longer slaves but guildsfolk, their profits their own. In the West, Casterly Rock became a different sort of place. Tywin died at last, peacefully some said, though others whispered it was not so simple. Jaime and Brienne inherited the castle in law, but spent little time there, preferring to wander the roads of the realm. They established a school for knights and squires, girls and boys alike, drawing students from every corner of the land, and the tales of their fairness, and Brienne's strength, and Jaime's wisdom spread like warm bread among the small folk. Oberyn Martell's death, inevitable, spectacular, in the fighting pits of Volantis, besting 3 pit champions before being brought down by treachery, became legend. Arianne Martell succeeded him as Princess of Dorne, ally herself with Sansa and Tommen. Dornish traders filled the southern markets, and the city's fountains at last ran clear. The north prospered. Jon Snow, never crowned, governed as Lord of Winterfell in all but name. He married late, but wisely, to a wildling woman who had come south with Tormund Giantsbane and a new generation of free folk. The wall was manned, if thinly, by both black brothers and those same free folk, who now traded furs and fish for grain and steel. Bronn, to no one's surprise, remained the most dangerous man in the city, even as he grew wealthy and portly. He built a mansion of pink stone on the Gold Road and filled it with songbirds, fast horses, and children. Some his, some Lala's, some rescued from the city's gutters. He and Tyrion met for wine each week, their jokes as sharp as ever, their laughter sometimes covering sorrows too deep for words. As for the Iron Islands, Euron Greyjoy's reign ended as madly as it had begun. Burned by his own priests, his corpse flung into the sea with curses. The islands became a thorn, but never again a sword. Victarion's fleet was broken by storms. Yara Greyjoy, wise and wary, traded salt and herring to the north, and her ships patrolled the coast for pirates and slavers, winning her a grudging respect even in Old Town. Every year, Tyrion traveled to River Run for the autumn harvest. He and Brynden Tully, grown nearly ancient, played chess by the fire, argued over history, and swapped news of every foolish lord and cunning merchant in the land. The Blackfish never married, but River Run never lacked for laughter, children, or song. Tyrion's own hair went white, then thin. His steps slowed, but his wit never dulled. He saw the city's first printing press installed by Braavosi craftsmen. He sponsored a theater, watched 1,000 plays about dragons and kings, fools and monsters. Sometimes, children asked to see his hands. Were they really stained with blood, as old tales claimed? He would show them his small crooked fingers and say, "Every hand is stained. Some only show it sooner." Tommen, upon his majority, stepped down in favor of a council, declaring himself king of the people, first among equals. Some said the notion would not last, but it endured through his gentle strength. His children, by Margaery, by another quiet lady of the court after Margaery's death from fever, became lords and ladies of the city, not the realm. And still, peace held. In his last years, Tyrion found himself dreaming more often of the sea. He would walk the piers at dusk, smelling salt and pitch, the city alive behind him, and sometimes he would see Varys' shadow slipping between two ships, or hear Shay's laughter on the wind. In the quiet after sunset, he'd sit with Sansa or Bronn, or even alone, and recall the world before the war, a world of pride and cruelty and foolish love. His end came quietly. One winter night, as a light snow dusted the rooftops, he fell asleep in his solar above the city he'd shaped. The candle burned low. A book of songs opened by his hand. His last letter to Sansa, unfinished but content. When he did not rise, Tommen himself led the city in mourning. No king, no lord, no hand was mourned more widely in living memory. On the day of his funeral, every banner in the realm, wolf, rose, trout, sun, falcon, lion, hung black from the towers. The bells rang, not in terror or mourning, but in gratitude. Children cast flowers into the black water, and Sansa, now queen in the north, came to speak words over his bier. He was my friend. He was the city's friend. He was in the end more merciful than any who claimed the crown. And in the markets, the inns, the halls, the people repeated the tale. Tyrion Lannister, kinslayer and queenslayer, builder and breaker, the man who chose peace. The city endured. Generations passed. The scars of war faded, rebuilt in stone and song. The Iron Throne itself was melted down a century after Tyrion's death. The swords reforged into plowshares and bridges. The memory of the war became story. The story became legend, and the legend became hope. In that hope, in every child who ran the alleys laughing, in every loaf broken at the table, in every bell that rang for joy and not for warning, Tyrion Lannister lived on, a reminder that one man's mercy, even if paid in blood, could change the fate of kings and kingdoms. That sometimes the smallest voice, raised at the moment of greatest darkness, could turn the wheel of the world toward dawn. And so King's Landing, city of flame and tears, city of second chances, thrived beneath banners of peace, and the wind off the Blackwater carried with it, always, the memory of the dwarf who had slain a queen and saved a realm. Hei, Agni, Sequel. The decades rolled past the death of Tyrion Lannister like a slow swelling tide, leaving behind a city transformed by mercy and marked by memory. King's Landing, once a city of fire and iron and death, had become something else, resilient, bustling, full of life. Its streets grew wider, its walls higher but no longer bristling with fear. Every spring, the bells rang to honor the day the war ended. A festival of music and flowers. Children crowned with garlands of river lilies and wolf's bane, bread and oranges scattered among the poor, as offerings to the city's enduring peace. In the council hall, where kings and queens once raged, the council of the realm endured, its benches filled by lords and ladies, chosen by both blood and merit. The city was ruled not by the will of one, but by the will of many. There were squabbles and scandals and ambition. There always would be, as long as men and women drew breath. But the old madness never returned. Tommen, the boy king who became king in council, passed quietly in his sleep after 50 summers. His daughter, Alysanne, guided by Sansa's long wise letters, led the city through a generation of prosperity. The small folk remembered. In the shade of the Red Keep, where new towers housed learning and law, Mothers told their children of Tyrion Lannister, the kinslayer who became peacemaker, the man who ended the last queen's cruelty. The tale of his courage and cleverness became part of the city's soul. Old women swore that the Emp's ghost wandered the city at night, offering riddles and coin to those who needed them, always with a wry smile and a secret kindness. Even the Guild of Actors, which flourished in those years, staged comedies and tragedies of his life, some that made him a hero, others a devil, but all ending with the city free and the bells ringing. In the rebuilt streets of Flea Bottom, the poorest children found refuge in the halls built by Sansa and Marjorie, cared for by septons and septas, and retired knights who had outlived their swords. The great library, bounded by the crown and overseen by Samwell Tarly's daughter, drew scholars from every land. The summer islands, the free cities, even far Yeti and Ashai. They copied books, debated law, discovered remedies for illness, and kept the memory of the war alive so that peace might never be taken for granted. Sometimes when rain misted the city, the old guards would gather at the taverns, raising a mug to those who fell at Blackwater, or on the steps of Baelor's Sept, or at the Red Wedding. The names of Ned Stark and Brynden Tully, Brienne of Tarth and Jon Snow, were recited like prayers. But always at the end, someone would toast Tyrion Lannister, the lion who became a man. The North sent grain and stone by river barge each summer, and in return, the South sent lemon cakes and sweet Dornish wine. Winterfell had become a city of its own, ringed by orchards and fields. Jon Snow's grandchildren kept the pact with the South, traveling each year to King's Landing for the festival, their black cloaks and white wolves a familiar sight in the streets. Dorne flourished. The old rivalries with the Reach were remembered only in songs. Now the roads between Sunspear and Old Town were safe for the first time in memory. Arianne's descendants, clever and fierce, kept the council honest, their voices sharp as scimitars and twice as keen. Every 3 years, a Martell sat on the council, and their banners, sunburst and spear, became as beloved as the rose or the trout or the direwolf. Sansa's letters, collected and read aloud in the city square, guided generations. She died in Winterfell, an old woman with silver in her hair and snow in her bones. On the day her death was announced, the bells of the city tolled a full hour, and every child wore a white ribbon for mourning. Her body was sent south in a casket of white birch, and she was laid to rest in the godswood of the Red Keep, her tomb inscribed, Queen in the North, Mother of Mercy, Friend of the Imp. Brienne of Tarth, outliving most, became legend. In her final years, she trained girls and boys alike in the art of sword and shield, founding a new order of knights who swore never to raise sword in cruelty or pride. They called themselves the Lion's Guard, in honor of Tyrion, and their vows were recited every spring at the festival. Protection of the weak, honesty before all things, and justice without favor. Bronn, as gray as old silver, spent his days among the singers and his nights at the tables. His line flourished, half the city claiming kin to him, and it was said he gave away as much coin as he'd ever earned. At his funeral, the whores and beggars and street children of King's Landing followed the bier, singing bawdy songs and tossing silver into the gutters for luck. Across the narrow sea, the world changed as well. The dragon throne was never rebuilt, and dragons became a tale for children, their memory preserved in song and carved on doorways and drinking cups. The Iron Bank, made richer by Westeros' steady trade, became less feared and more trusted, and for the first time since the days of Aegon, Westerosi gold coins bore not a king's head but the image of the city itself. A crowned lion and a laughing imp. Laws changed. The right of trial by combat was abolished, and justice became a careful thing, measured and watched. No king or queen would ever again hold absolute power. The council expanded, its seats contested by guilds and towns, the voices of farmers and fishwives carrying as much weight as those of knights and lords. There were still fools and villains, but they were outnumbered by honest hearts and bright minds. The children of the realm learned to read and write, to debate and to wonder. They grew up on tales of Tyrion and Sansa, Jon and Brienne, and the long road from darkness to dawn. Each spring, the city gathered for a week of song, of feasts, of stories shared under lanterns and banners. The festival always ended at the river, where candles floated on the water in memory of all those lost, and the city stood together in silence. In the dreams of the old, the imp sometimes still walked the city's ramparts, or sat with a cup of wine in the torchlight of a crowded inn. Some swore he watched over the city from the shadows, his laughter echoing after midnight. Others said he had found peace at last, and that his ghost haunted not the stones of the Red Keep, but the hearts of all who chose mercy over vengeance, wit over cruelty, hope over fear. And so the city endured, and the realm, and the tale. The great Game of Thrones had become the gentle game of councils and markets and alliances, and in that gentler game, the smallest pieces could turn the world. Tyrion Lannister's memory lived on, not as a king or conqueror, but as the man who ended a dynasty of blood for the promise of peace. No one could ever be certain how long such peace might last, but for those who walked the sunlit streets of King's Landing, it was enough. On the 100th anniversary of Tyrion's death, the city's bells rang brighter than ever. From every corner of the realm people came, Northmen in their furs, Dornish in silk and sunlight, the folk of the Vale and the Reach, of the Isles and the Stormlands, gathered in the city's heart. The council led the festival, and the oldest woman in King's Landing, wrinkled and wise, told the youngest child on her knee. Once, the world was dark and cruel, but then, a little man dared to do what was right. He saved a king. He slew a queen. He gave us all a chance. Remember him, and remember that any of us, no matter how small, can change the world. They done. And so, as lanterns floated on the river and music soared through streets washed clean by spring rain, the city story continued, written in laughter and in hope, in the names of children and the dreams of the old. A tale of mercy, and of the smallest man who left the largest mark. Yaki. Generations blurred as the city's stones, worn smooth by 1,000 feet and 100 years of seasons, shifted from the backdrop of legend into the sturdy skeleton of an enduring home. King's Landing, once the fulcrum upon which the fate of kingdoms teetered, no longer trembled beneath the threat of a single sovereign's whim or the shadow of a conquering army. Peace, that most delicate of flowers, had seated itself deep, its roots strong enough to weather passing storms. Children born in the aftermath of Tyrion Lannister's long-remembered sacrifice never knew the hunger or terror of siege. Instead, they played at war only in stories, running their games of lions and wolves and dragons in the squares beneath towers, where banners faded gently in the sun, not by fire or blood. Their parents and grandparents sometimes paused at twilight, watching the city from garden balconies or the bustling lanes, hearts full of gratitude and sometimes disbelief that what had been won in those desperate years had not unraveled. In every corner of the city, the stories of the Queenslayer, the imp, echoed not as warning but as inspiration. The new city mint, built by the river where once wildfires seethed, pressed the smallest coins with his likeness, a half smile, a lifted cup. It was said that the coins brought luck, and no market stall went without one nailed to a beam or slipped beneath the scales. The festival that had begun as a celebration of peace grew larger each year, first in the plazas, then spilling into the gardens of the great houses, until at last it encompassed the whole city. For a week each spring, King's Landing became a living tapestry of memory. Plays performed in every square, songs and toasts, riddles and tales told beneath the light of thousands of floating lanterns on the Blackwater. The festival was not for kings or queens, but for the people. The council, now called the Assembly, met each month in a sunlit rotunda where pillars of marble, quarried from the north and the Reach and carved by Dornish hands, bore the symbols of all the great houses and many lesser ones besides. Its members were chosen as often from guilds and septs, ship captains and even former sellswords, as from ancient blood. Some called it the Imp's Table, behind closed doors, and the name, meant first in jest, became a badge of pride. Scribes kept careful records of every argument, every vote, every law and judgment. Children studied the decisions of the assembly in the schools, and visiting scholars from the free cities marveled at the curious, deliberate balance struck between lords and commons. The city changed in other ways too. The old brothels, once hives of misery and desperation, became great houses of pleasure and revelry. Licensed, safe, and taxed, the healers of the city, midwives, barbers, and maesters alike, established a college of remedies near the Sept, where the lessons of plague and war were preserved for the common good. The black cells beneath the Red Keep were sealed forever, their horrors bricked away, replaced by sunlit gardens and memorial stones bearing the names of the lost. In the Street of Steel, dwarves and giants, names for any who stood out, whether by birth or by deeds, were honored by a new guild, their motto taken from the old king's favorite jest: small hands, large deeds. Apprentices of every trade learned that no birth or station barred them from greatness. The assembly sponsored prizes for inventions, plays, and cleverness in all its forms, and each year the winner was granted a seat at council for a day. The North continued its cautious bond with the South. The memory of Sansa Stark, wise and unbending, became legend in two kingdoms, her statue standing in both Winterfell and the Godswood of the Red Keep. Her descendants, dark-haired and blue-eyed, kept to the ancient gods but walked among the assembly each year, their opinions respected, their customs celebrated. The Wall, no longer a prison, became a place of pilgrimage and learning, a monument to the folly and glory of the past. In the west, the Lannister line grew thin, then strong again. No longer lords of Casterly Rock alone, they sent daughters as often as sons to serve on the assembly. A marble relief in the assembly rotunda depicted Tyrion not in finery, but seated at a writing table, a cup and ledger before him, a stack of letters, always unfinished. Beneath, the motto: he paid the price so others would not have to. Dorne, ever proud, ever different, shaped the laws of inheritance and marriage for all the realm. Its traditions of respect for women's wisdom and for love unconstrained by custom became not the exception, but the ideal. Every decade, a new treaty renewed bonds of trade and trust. The Dornish princess, descendant of Arianne, bright-eyed and steel-hearted, visited each festival in disguise, dancing in the markets and learning the jokes of the city folk. None gave her away, for she moved among them as the imp had, a small thing changing the world. Old enemies found new peace. The Iron Islands, their iron-born ways tempered by sea trade and kinship with the North, sent merchants and shipwrights to the capital, their longships now more often laden with timber and cloth than axes and salt wives. The rivers ran clear, the riverlands green and rich. The Reach sent new breeds of rose, and the city's parks bloomed in colors unseen in the time of war. In the city itself, the last generation to remember the old days passed into memory. Stories then became the realm's inheritance. The tale of how a little man, despised and underestimated, ended a queen and freed a king, reshaped the world not with swords but with mercy, was now the subject of every child's first lesson, every bard's first song. The tradition of the Queenslayer's Day continued, first with torchlit processions, then with a great contest of riddles and wit. Each year, the assembly awarded a golden cup, cast in the shape of Tyrion's own, to the cleverest child in the city, who was granted the imp's right, one favor, to be granted by law, within reason and kindness. Some asked for a week's bread for their street. One year, a child asked for a new roof for the orphan house. One year, a bold girl asked to join the assembly for a day. She did, and was later apprenticed to the city scribes. As the years spun onward, the Red Keep itself evolved. The Iron Throne, long emptied of power, was eventually dismantled. The swords of old enemies forged into arches for new libraries and bridges. The ancient vaults became schools. The council chambers grew windows, sunlight and air-filling rooms once shadowed by suspicion. The archives of the city, the work of countless maesters, poets, and clerks, swelled with new songs, new dramas, new histories. Tyrion's own writings, his ledgers, letters, and late-in-life memoirs, wry and sharp and full of warnings, were read aloud each festival. His advice, never ignore the hungry, never trust those who despise laughter, never fear to question power, became maxims recited by children and adults alike. One winter, a century after the Kinslayer's death, snow fell thick on King's Landing, turning the red roofs white and muffling the bells. In the assembly, the eldest member, a gray-bearded woman whose grandmother had once met Tyrion, rose to address the council. "We have kept the peace longer than any memory can hold. We have prospered. We have changed. But never forget what we learned, that mercy can triumph over cruelty, that wit can best the sword, that the smallest among us can carry the greatest hope." That night, as lanterns burned in every window, the city's children gathered on the banks of the Blackwater, each holding a single candle. At the stroke of midnight, they set their lights adrift. Thousands of flames floated downriver, past the docks and gardens, past the stones where the queen fell and the imp walked free, out to the open sea. The city stood silent as the lights drifted away, but the hope they represented, hard won and carefully tended, remained. King's Landing. City of the Dragon, City of the Lion, City of Peace, endured, and in its stones, in its stories, in every heart that beat within its walls, the legacy of Tyrion Lannister burned brighter than ever. A beacon in the dark, the laughter of a small man echoing through the centuries. As centuries spiraled onward, the city at the mouth of the Blackwater endured, a living palimpsest, each era inscribing its triumphs and follies upon the bones of the last. King's Landing, once the anvil of empires, drifted ever further from its blood-drenched origins. Its people, the true pulse of the city, evolved in ways neither king nor council could have dreamed. Each spring, Queenslayer's Week welcomed travelers from all corners of Westeros and far Essos. Once a humble day, now 7 nights of revelry flooded the lanes, harbors, and squares. Bards from Bravos and Old Town, jugglers from the Summer Isles, mummers and apprentices of the Small Hands, large deeds, guild all vied for the Golden Cup, still called the Imp's Chalice, forged anew each year with a laughing lion crest. The champion's favor, the unps right, could move the council, feed 100, mend a bridge, or, as in one memorable year, make every baker in the city share a single secret recipe for lemon cakes. The Queen's baker grumbled for months, but the city delighted. By this era, the Assembly's Hall had become both symbol and engine of Westeros' stability. Marble and glass, light from all directions, seats reserved for the great houses, the guilds, the faith, the sailors, the healers, the artists, even the children's voice. A post held by a new boy or girl every 3 months, chosen by citywide ballot. Though old noble bloodlines sometimes resented such inclusion, none could challenge the Assembly's legitimacy. Even the ancient lords of the Vale or the Dour Starks, still holding the North, sent their brightest to learn in the city and serve a term at the Assembly's bench. The legends of Tyrion Lannister were now woven into every lesson and law, sometimes polished and embellished, sometimes painfully plain. His portrait, smiling, cup in hand, quill behind one ear, hung in the assembly and every school. The city's orators recited his sharpest retorts as examples of both wisdom and mercy. Each child could repeat the story of the trial and the poison, the queen's fall, and the dawn after, the day the small man, by his own peril, had broken the wheel and set a new age in motion. Not all was peace, for no realm can keep the world's teeth at bay forever. The sea brought plagues and pirates, and sometimes, the old scars between regions reopened. But the city had learned resilience, debate, and adaptation. When the red pox came on a spring tide, the College of Remedies, descendants of Samwell Tarly's line and free folk healers, acted quickly, closing the harbors, quarantining the sick, and spreading the story of the Queenslayer's mercy in every district. Thousands marched masked and singing through the streets, leaving baskets of bread and broth at doors. Fewer died than in any remembered plague. The Assembly's swift, open response set an example for other cities, even those across the narrow sea. Elsewhere, the city flourished in new ways. The old guild of actors, grown vast, became the city's third court, their stage plays weighing almost as much in the people's eyes as any pronouncement of the Assembly. Their lamp-lit open-air theaters drew crowds night after night, sometimes mocking the lords and ladies, sometimes celebrating them, always reminding the powerful that laughter was the city's oldest law. From these players came a tradition that outlasted gold or glory. Each new assembly member, upon taking their seat, must recite a jest, a riddle, or a brief tale in the imp's honor, as a reminder that pride is best swallowed with wit. Trade, science, and craft thrived. The docks grew larger. Ships with striped sails and foreign captains filled the harbors. The city's glassworks produced windows and bottles, sent as far as Norvos and Lies. The printing houses published treatises on philosophy, medicine, even politics, translated into 4 tongues and shared by wandering scholars. One series, Tyrion's Letters, a compilation of his advice and commentary, was required reading for every aspiring counselor. The best minds, no matter their birth, found a place within the city's halls or among its inventors, whose devices, clocks, windmills, water pumps, spread to towns across the realm. King's Landing itself stretched and shimmered anew. The old walls, once so vital, became a park where children played among statues of past heroes and villains, some regal, some mischievous, a few with sly grins that suspiciously resembled Tyrion's own. The Blackwater's banks were lined with willows and lanterns. At night, lovers strolled beneath 1,000 stars, remembering not the flames of war, but the warmth of stories shared. New faiths and old mingled peaceably. The septs stood, their bells ringing, but temples to the Lord of Light and the many-faced God, to the Mother Royne and the Lady of Waves, all rose in neighborhoods where traders had brought custom and kin. The assembly, ever pragmatic, codified the freedom of worship, and the city grew rich in prayers and festivals, each finding its echo in the others. Generations blurred. The descendants of Sansa and Jon, of the Tyrells and Martells, of the Lannisters and even the Greyjoys, all had their moments in the sun and in the assembly's shadow. No single name dominated for long, but the city's children always learned first that their fates were their own to make, and that even a broken thing may hold the world together. On the 200th Queenslayer's Week, the assembly hosted the largest gathering in the city's history. Delegations from every kingdom, from the farthest mountain clan to the isles of the Summer Sea, gathered in the amphitheater overlooking the Blackwater. The King's Landing Orchestra, founded by a cellist whose ancestor had played in the first festival, performed a symphony based on Tyrion's life, mischief, sorrow, courage, wit, and finally, a gentle recurring theme of laughter. Children gathered on the riverbank, candles and tiny boats in hand. At sunset, the oldest woman in the city, a baker's daughter, now a grandmother of 40, stood before the assembly and recited the old lines. In the darkest night, one candle burns. A clever word, a cup of wine, a hand unturned. Mercy, greater than pride, laughter, sharper than steel. Let the world remember, the smallest spark can set the wheel to healing. Mentrado. At her gesture, thousands of children set their candles afloat. The Blackwater shimmered with light, and as the city watched, bells ringing and music swelling, the floating lights drifted downriver, out to sea, and into legend. That night, an easterly wind swept through the city, scattering the petals of spring flowers across the stones. Some swore they heard laughter, high and bright, on the breeze, like a toast, a joke, a promise kept. In that city of memory and becoming, the past was never quite silent, and the future never quite closed. The legacy of the Kinslayer, Queenslayer, Peacemaker, and Wit was never reduced to a single tale or name. He lived in the jokes traded in the squares, in the laws that spared the innocent, in the faces of children who knew the world could be better. Because once, when hope seemed lost, a small man had dared to choose mercy. So King's Landing endured, and the world with it, its heart beating strong on the far side of shadow. Always remembering, always becoming something new. K.K. In the many centuries that followed the flowering of peace in King's Landing, the city and realm changed so profoundly that the world Tyrion Lannister had known became the subject of scholars, poets, and mythmakers, half remembered, half reimagined. A tapestry whose thread still gleamed with his legacy. A tapestry whose thrill gleamed with his legacy. The old Red Keep's highest tower was renamed the Lantern Hall. Once the preserve of tyrants and schemers, it had become a place of light and gathering. Its topmost chamber opened to sky and starlight, adorned with mosaics of every house and trade. Its floor inlaid with the city's new sigil. A crowned laughing lion, golden on pale stone, flanked by a rose, a trout, a wolf, a sun, and the tiny imprint of a cup. There, each new council of the assembly met to witness the dawn of its term, swearing oaths not to a single ruler, but to the peace and well-being of the city and the realm beyond. The monarchy was long abolished. The last king, descended distantly from Tommen, and remembered for little more than a gentle voice and a ready smile, having stepped aside 150 years after Tyrion's death, as the assembly and the common councils of the other great cities demanded greater say in law and governance. The notion of a single family ruling Westeros, or even a single city, was by then as quaint as tales of dragons and white walkers. All 7 kingdoms had, by quiet revolution and slow reform, become their own, bound in a league of peace known as the Great Compact. Kings and queens, when they existed, were constitutional and ceremonial, little more than storytellers and keepers of tradition, riding in flower-strewn carriages on feast days, presiding over weddings and harvests. The real power lay in the hands of assemblies, senates, and people's moots, all modeled after the first great assembly of King's Landing. Laws were made in the open for all to see. Even the poorest towns sent delegates. Potters and shipwrights and shepherds sat in the great halls beside the proudest blood. Tyrion's legacy as the Queenslayer shifted over time. To some he was remembered as the first citizen, to others the father of the compact, to others a kind of trickster saint, patron of wit, mercy, and the underdog. His likeness, still grinning, still holding a cup, adorned not only coins, but the medallions given to each assembly member on their first day. His sayings were painted over doorways and inscribed on fountains. A mind needs books as a sword needs a whetstone. Never forget what you are. The world will not. Mercy is the coin of peace. And dozens more, some true to his words, some borrowed from those who followed. His story, retold 1,000 ways, had been set to music, performed in comedies and tragedies alike, and even given new life in puppet plays and lantern shows. Some versions focused on his trial, others on his wit. Some cast Cersei as villain, others as victim of her own time. All agreed that in the end, his hand had turned the wheel, setting the city on its path. Each spring, Queenslayer's Week was no longer merely a festival, but a pilgrimage. From the north, caravans came bearing hearty apples, strong wool, barrels of honey and ice wine. From Dorne, silks and citrus and the finest glass. From the Iron Islands, driftwood, carvings, and salted cod. From Old Town, books and students and rare wines. The city's population swelled threefold, as camps and tents spread up the hills and out along the riverside. The festival itself had become a marvel. A new theme was chosen each year. Sometimes mercy, sometimes the gift of wit, sometimes freedom's song. There were parades of children in costume, recitations of riddles and poems, pageants of famous moments from the city's past. The small hands, large deeds contest, now for adults as well as children, had produced poets, lawmakers, healers, and architects who went on to shape the city and the wider world. The MPS chalice, a work of art as much as gold, went to the person whose wit, compassion, or invention had best served the city that year. In Lantern Hall, the opening of the festival saw every banner, every faith and trade, gathered in a ring. The assembly's speaker, chosen by lot, so that no one voice ruled for long, would recite the oath of the city, a blend of Tyrion's words and the vows of all the peoples of Westeros. We are not one, but many. We are small hands in great deeds. We are laughter in darkness, bread to the hungry, a shield to the weak. We remember, and we choose. Always we choose. As night fell, thousands upon thousands gathered along the Blackwater, the lantern hall glowing above them like a second moon. One by one, people set lanterns adrift, tiny boats of wax and paper, bearing a wish or a memory or a hope. The river became a stream of stars. Beyond the city, the lands flourished. The North kept its independence in custom and character, but sent its scholars and trade. Dorne remained fierce and free, its own laws respected. The Reach and Riverlands, once rivals, shared seeds and harvest festivals. The Westerlands, ever proud, were famed for their glass and theater, their charity and their willingness to laugh at their own ancestors. The Iron Islands, land of once raiders, had become famed for shipwrights and the League's fastest messengers. Storm's End, so long battered by gales and war, was the breadbasket of the South. The faith of the Seven was one among many. The Great Sept stood, but beside it rose temples to Rhoynar gods, free-folk shrines, even a house of enlightened shadows where those who sought knowledge of any kind could study, debate, or find rest. On the eve of the festival, all faiths offered blessing together, the city's many bells and chimes ringing in harmony. No one pretended that evil was vanquished or that sorrow never touched the city. There were still squabbles, injustices, the pain of loss, and the shock of flood or fire. But never again did the city bow to one will. Even in grief, the city healed itself. Together, through assemblies and open council, through stories and song. In the assembly's archives, beside the yellowed ledgers and the first compact, lay a small glass cup, cracked and mended, said to have been Tyrion's own. Children visiting the hall would press their palms to the glass, leaving fingerprints for a moment before their elders ushered them out. It was said that to touch the cup was to feel, for a heartbeat, the courage to speak truth, and the warmth of laughter shared. In all these things, the city did not so much keep Tyrion's memory as live it, every day, every year, in 1,000 acts of wit, compassion, and hope. The Queenslayer, the imp, the peacemaker, became less a man than the spirit of the city itself, whispering through its lanes, echoing in the laughter of its children, woven into every festival, every law, every dawn. Thus King's Landing, remade and unbroken, moved ever onward. A city that had once been the grave of empires, now the hearth of a new world, always honoring the smallest spark, and the gentle strength that once dared to kindle hope against the dark.